All right, what's going on? Drive time Tuesday afternoon, about 13 minutes past the hour of 2 o'clock. Should be golfing today. It's 50 degrees. It's sunny. It's December. Makes no sense. But it looks like we have a grip of pretty warm and mild weather for this time of year here in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah, and the surrounding areas. Those of you hoping for a white Christmas, it is Utah, so you never know. But as of now, it looks like it's going to be warm and sunny all week and all weekend long. And according to the 10-day, we could get up to 55 degrees next week, midweek around Tuesday. Anyway, there's your weather forecast. That's not why you tune in. As it is every day, it's good to have you along for the ride. My name is Spence Checketts. I host this radio show. That young man is Porter Larson. He produces it. And we have a lot to do on the show today. Very, very busy show. The latest on the transfer portal for the University of Utah football team, for BYU as well. Of course, BYU still has one game to play. They have a bowl game left against Colorado coming up on the 28th in the Alamo Bowl. The CFP will get going on Friday. So college football ahead. A lot of fun college football. Hopefully the expanded 12-team CFP brings a lot of intrigue. So we'll get to the latest. Isaac Wilson is back for the Utes. So good news for University of Utah football program. Good news for Coach Witt and Jason Beck. So we'll get to that. College basketball this time of year. Craig Smith, running Utes, Big 12 conference play right around the corner. BYU national buzz with a top 10 recruiting class coming in next year. So some college basketball on the show today. Of course, A.J. DeBanza, it continues to be all the talk after a really exciting performance over the weekend. Holiday Hoop Fest or something along the lines. That kid is, he's really good, man. He just is. There's no other way to put it. He's an excellent talent, and he is going to be quite a story here locally and nationally coming up next year as he plays for Brigham Young. But a lot of college basketball this time of year, still pretty football-centric. Week 15 of the NFL wrapped up last night with a Thursday night doubleheader that was, it's all right. It's football. Not a huge Thursday night football NFL guy. Always love the NFL. But we did see a couple of games last night. Something is wrong with Kirk Cousins, has been for a while, but Atlanta survives in Vegas against the Raiders, and the Vikings really had no issues against the Bears. So Week 15 is now behind us. We look ahead to Week 16, and as the holidays approach, it is a bit of a funky slate. It will start on Thursday night in SoFi in Inglewood, California, where the Broncos will take on the Chargers. Justin Herbert questionable. The Chargers are a 3-point favorite. A lot of injuries in the NFL, and Patrick Mahomes needs to get right by Saturday. As of now, the Chiefs are hosting the Texans, and they're an underdog at Arrowhead, a 1-point underdog against the Texans. And another big game is going to be on Saturday afternoon. That'll be the Steelers and the Ravens before a bevy of Sunday action, wrapping up with a Monday night game that will be the Saints and the Packers. So we're going to do some pro football on the show today. Overreaction after Week 15 is behind us. Some of the favorites are taking a bit of a dip in Vegas. Lions have a grip of injury issues. And what does Mahomes' injury means for the Chiefs? We're going to talk about that on the show today. So, a lot to get to. The Utah Jazz played an NBA game last night, and it didn't go well. It went horribly. It escalated quickly. The Jazz have now lost, 9 of their last 10? I don't know, man. They're 5-20. They're not good at basketball. It's by design. It's a hard thing when it comes to doing this job or the job of a guy like Andy Larson or somebody, Sarah Todd covers the Jazz. You have to manufacture storylines for a team that's unserious about winning. They didn't do anything well last night. They haven't done anything well all year. As Tom Haberstroh reminded us, they're pretty good at getting the free throw line. So if you're looking for holiday gifts, get some Jazz tickets and tell your buddies that you can go watch a team that's really good at shooting free throws and not good at anything else. But this time of year, now that the deadline has passed, about 87% of the league is eligible to be traded. And so a lot of trade rumors, some of them surround the Utah Jazz. The Deseret News apparently did a piece on Ryan Smith today and sent it over to ESPN. If you haven't read it, it's up on ESPN's front page. It's something else, man. Day in the life of our guy, Rye, the owner of the Jazz Utah Hockey Club. So that is front page on the ESPN NBA side of things. The NBA Cup Championship is tonight, but you guys already knew that. It's the Bucks and the Thunder live in Vegas. So if you're into the NBA Cup, high five to you. A lot to do on the show. Omar Ruiz, NFL Network. We're going to do some pro football right off the top. Look back on Week 15. Look ahead to Week 16. Who's left standing that can still win the thing? Is Josh Allen high speed ahead of the MVP? This kind of feels like it could be Buffalo's year. Baltimore might have something to say about it. Detroit is just so banged up. And what does the Mahomes high ankle sprain mean for the Chiefs? We'll bring in Omar today. NBA Daily Assist, Tim McMahon. Zach Harper wrote a piece today for The Athletic outlining a bunch of trade scenarios. The Jazz were involved in several of them. And then Dave Fox will stop by today. I'll be on TV with Dave tonight at 10:35 on KMYU. I'll actually be on TV with the GOAT, Adam Mikulich, my guy. No Dave Fox tonight, but Dave will be on the show today. Omar Ruiz, Tim McMahon, Zach Harper, Dave Fox, me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners, and that guy, Porter Larson, producing the show on a Tuesday. I should get it in my contract that I only do my hits with Adam.
Well, and since Dave's not on the show, I wish you would have told me that. I would have got Adam.
You know what? Let's switch it up.
Should we see if he's free?
Kick Dave off and get Adam on. Have them both roll into studio. Is Dave coming in the studio today?
I don't think so. So let's maybe see what Adam's up to around 4:30 and go from there. And then, how much do you think Ryan Smith paid Michael Rothstein to post that story?
Did you read that?
Some of it.
Oh, I read the whole thing, man. That read
Thank
like
you.
a BYU
Someone
magazine piece. Talked about how Ryan can dunk. Doubt it. Handles the ball like a point guard. I mean, look, that was straight Smith Entertainment Group PR. Hand this to ESPN. I'm stunned that ESPN printed that. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, I mean, it's where media's at, Spence. It's where we're at, right? So why you say you're stunned, I'm not. I'm taken aback a little bit sometimes when I read that kind of thing, but then I realize kind of how this big picture thing works, and not surprised by it, but it's it could be worse. I'll say that.
I don't know, man. I'm trying to find my favorite line where it's like, sources say his secret sauce is charisma and competitiveness. Like, what?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It like, do your thing, Rye. But
no, Rye's my guy.
I'm gonna cringe about it.
No,
I'm gonna let you know about it.
Let's be clear. Rye's my guy. Okay, Rye's my guy.
Our guy.
This is not knocking on my guy Rye, although I don't have a hat on today. This is knocking on whoever wrote that piece. Charisma, competitiveness. Anyway, let's move on from all that. It's up on the front page of the ESPN NBA section, a piece that was written about Ryan Smith today. Omar Ruiz will be our first guest right out of the gates today to talk some pro football. The NFL has been so fun this year. A lot of NFL left to go. But on a Tuesday afternoon, before we get to Omar, courtesy of our friends at Standard Restaurant Supply, check them out online or their convenient location located here centrally in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah. On a Tuesday afternoon, it's time now for your opening tip. Got to give a shout out to our guy, Riles, the voice of the Utes, former Midland Midday radio host here on ESPN 700, who joined the program yesterday. And Bill is very limited as a result of him now being a university employee as far as being able to talk about news that has not been officially announced by the University of Utah program, the athletic department. But he did say yesterday during our interview early in the show that he had been told more than a few players currently in the transfer portal, the feeling was they were going to be coming back to play for Kyle and to play for Utah. So we wondered aloud over the course of the show if one of those players that Riles was referring to was one Isaac Wilson, quarterback for the Utes, and whether or not Isaac would look to come back. So after we signed off air, sometime around, 6:30 or 7 o'clock last night, it did become official as Isaac tweeted out himself, "A Utah man am I." So Isaac Wilson is back to play quarterback for the University of Utah. 4-star recruit, Corner Canyon. He is as decorated as a quarterback prospect that Utah has ever been able to lock in as a recruit. There are other 4-star recruits Utah has been able to snag, but Isaac is among the most decorated prospects that Utah's ever been able to recruit at the quarterback position. And after he entered the transfer portal, in a way, it's a little bit, if we could draw a loose parallel here, as you know, I want to do that on the show from time to time. I don't know how many Jazz fans are watching the Cavs this year, but as Jazz fans in our market, we're not necessarily used to seeing our great players go elsewhere and play great. We're just not. It's a weird thing. Carl had a minute with the Lakers that was weird. Then he got hurt. It didn't end well. Gordon Hayward broke his leg, unfortunately for him. Darren Williams went on to the Nets and just never was the guy he was here for about 4 years, one of the best lead guards in pro basketball in Salt Lake, and never came to fruition as he left for the New Jersey Nets at the time, now Brooklyn Nets. Well, Donovan's going to be the guy and is the guy, has been the guy that left here after a few years and is going to play really well somewhere else for a long time. And look, I'm not going to do the topic that I've done before, and that is the Jazz front office pulling the trigger a little bit prematurely on that entire group. But whatever, it is what it is. He was probably going to leave as a free agent. Danny saw that, so he dealt him, and here we are. But I felt that way about Isaac. I felt Isaac was going to, and I can't corroborate any of the whole desire to play at BYU, and they said no because they have Jake Retzlaff. I have no idea. I don't know what Utah paid Isaac to come back. I don't know what he turned out on the open market. I mean, if we just connect dots, obviously attempted the transfer portal stuff and attempted to see what his value was, wasn't happy what he saw in the open market, so decided to come back. And in so many ways, it's restricted free agency. It is the pro model. We just use different terms. We say transfer portal instead of free agency. That's what it is. And while there are some differences, certainly, Isaac went and tested the market and decided to come back and play for the University of Utah. Now, if you listen to the show, first of all, thank you. Hello, how are you? Second of all, you know that during the fall, as a lot of criticism seemed to be heaped on Isaac, I wasn't one of those people. This was an 18-year-old true freshman who enrolled in April, who a few months prior to signing to Utah was trying to figure out Farmington secondary, and now they asked him to figure out Big 12 secondaries. I still believe that wasn't the contingency as early as it manifested. I still don't think they wanted Isaac to play that quickly. I really feel like their plan was to have Isaac learn behind Cameron Rising for a year and then turn the keys to the car over to him, potentially as a sophomore. Now, we saw Brandon Rose play against Brigham Young and look pretty good. So people were wondering, hey, where was that? Should Brandon have been the backup? I don't know. Sam Heward's stuff never really worked out. Both Brandon and Sam have left. But Isaac announces that he's coming back to play for Kyle and play for Jason Beck, the new offensive coordinator. But my favorite part is that if you're Isaac Wilson, you see the Devin Dampier news, and the line is pretty clear. It's Jason's bringing his quarterback. There's no spot for me. So, like I said, I don't know what Utah's paying him. I don't know what he turned down from other schools. But if you remove all the bells and whistles, and if you remove all the ancillary stuff from the conversation, you just respect the kid for coming back to try to compete for the job. And look, Devin's got a couple years left to play. Isaac has 3. Who knows how this is going to play out? But if we've all learned anything, it is an exercise in futility to look further ahead than 1 year. Because who knows, right? I mean, Utah lost every single quarterback they had to the transfer portal at one point, got one back. Looks like they're probably going to be without the other 3. If stuff goes sideways, is Devin Dampier in the transfer portal next offseason? We have no idea what it's going to look like a year from now, so let's just focus on the here and now. And that is, at least you have 2 quarterbacks that look like they're in a position to potentially start and compete with each other, and rising tide lifts all boats. That's the thing. But also having that room crowded with options you feel comfortable with is only a good thing. So excited for Isaac to be back. It's good news for Utah football, and I think it's a good sign that this kid wants to come in and compete and utilize the lessons he learned. And maybe those lessons will pay dividends now because it was a bit of a baptism by fire, drinking through a fire hose type thing. So there's your good news for Utah football. It broke last night. We'll get back to some of the other transfer portal announcements for the Utes. There are a few that took place overnight that we didn't talk about yesterday that we'll talk about today. But coming up on the other side, Week 16, NFL football coming your way starting on Thursday. We'll look back on Week 15. We'll talk Week 16 and big picture pro football stories with Omar Ruiz from the NFL Network. So keep it right here on a Tuesday on ESPN 700. Tim McMahon rolls by today, NBA Daily Assist style. The Jazz played a basketball game last night. Didn't go well because that's kind of the deal. Zach Harper on NBA trade rumors. Dave Fox stops by for more college football. But time to talk to one of my favorites. Great time of year to talk a little NFL. Week 15 is behind us. Week 16 is ahead of us. Omar Ruiz is with us on a Tuesday. Omar, happy Tuesday, sir. How we doing?
Hey, Spence, happy Tuesday to you. It just felt so weird to hear you say Week 16. I feel like we were just talking about the season kicking off and the excitement for opening Thursday. And here we are, Christmas about a week away, and Week 16. It goes by fast. And like our parents used to say, here, ain't that the truth, man?
It is, Omar. It is, but I'm sorry that we have to start out this way, but I'm mad at you. Okay? I am upset with you. Are you ready? Are you ready for me to tell you why?
Yeah, let me hear it.
Okay, so all of the NFL guests, you included, you're one of our favorites, who I talked to preseason, and I've had over the past couple of weeks. I've had to go back to our preseason conversation where I asked you to make me feel good about being a Jets fan, Omar, which you tried to do, and it didn't go well. So I listened to you. I tried to approach the season with optimism, and it's been horrible. But serious question, like, what do? They clearly have married themselves to this guy under center, and it hasn't looked great. He's going to have some late season numbers that might convince people he's still the guy. But what do the New York Jets do to turn this thing around?
Oh, my goodness. It's a great question. Obviously, if there was a clear answer to that, I don't think we'd be in this mess. But I think I still believe that Aaron Rodgers, even at 41 or whatever he would turn next year, 42, whatever the case might be, still has some good football in him. And that defense, that we've had so many, conversations about the pieces in place and the potential for them, I think it's all there. I just think you need sort of a galvanizing force. And I don't know who's out there that could be that in a head coach to bring everybody together and unify, the offense, the defense, and kind of, breathe life into the organization. But I think that's the answer. But finding that person, finding your Dan Campbell or Sean Payton, somebody that it might take 2 or 3 years for that actually to take hold is tough. To get somebody like a Sean McVay that can just turn something around overnight is very difficult to find. And obviously all these owners are trying, like crazy to find that person. But, sometimes there is no easy answer. But for me, if they could find a head coach that could galvanize the team, get them all going in the right direction, and sort of, become a unifying force, I think that's what they're missing. I think, obviously Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas.
Yeah.
What had been there already just obviously didn't work, but they can get somebody that can bring all of it together. I think that's your answer.
I have a follow-up, and I'm serious. You're going to laugh at this, but I'm serious because I come from a split family. We're a Northeast family where my brother Andrew and myself were Jets fans, and my 2 brothers, Ben and Nate, are Giants fans. My dad's fair weather. I don't want to talk about it. But we're truly we're truly debating this. If you combined the Jets and the Giants roster, would you have a playoff team?
No.
I don't think so.
I think the Jets roster is not bad, and the fact that they've only won 4 games, I think speaks to what is lacking in terms of leadership, and obviously the Giants are a whole other story. Don't get me started on them and the issues that they have, but that roster seems to be pretty depleted, and no quarterback solution in sight for them. But yeah, I don't think they would be a playoff team because I think their issues are for the Jets is more than just talent. I think for the Giants, it's all about the quarterback.
Yeah, it's a sad state of affairs if you're a New York sports fan. There's no doubt about that. But moving off of it now, Omar, it's interesting watching the Vegas odds kind of fluctuate to start the year. They said there were 2 really good teams. Like if you're going to bet on a Super Bowl winner, put it on the Chiefs or the Niners. And obviously it hasn't worked out for San Francisco. We have a lot of Niner fans in this market, even though we don't have a team here. We have a lot of Niners fans here. Is this just simply injuries, period, that has derailed their season? And are you still bullish on what they can do under Kyle moving forward once they get fully healthy next season?
Yeah, I think, yes, I do think it is injuries, but I do think the injuries are because it's a culmination of year after year after year playing into the 20th, 21st week of the season and the wear and tear that is. And, especially with you have a team that, is veteran laden, that has, so much tread on the tire. I think, injuries for the most part are something that can't be avoided year after year after year. And San Francisco seems like every few years they had that. They had that in 2020 when Garoppolo was hurt and Nick Bosa was hurt and all that after that Super Bowl run that derailed their season. And similar story this year. Yeah, I think Kyle is a heck of a head coach, but I don't think it's as simple as just running it back when they're healthy, because remember, going into this offseason, it'll be the Brock Purdy contract that'll have to be dealt with. I don't think he plays next year, with the, in a contract year. I think that'll have to be resolved. And do you pay him $60 million? What I think is fascinating, and I think Kyle would be the coach to do it. Now, I know they believe in Brock. I don't think you can shy away from Brock. But it would be fascinating if the 49ers were a team that tried the great experiment of, because Kyle is such a good quarterback developer, such a good play caller, they can build around talent to, hey, let's get another young guy on the rookie contract, see if we can develop him and see what we would have there. Now, again, I think the quarterback is so important that they wouldn't do that. And I think they've identified Brock Purdy as somebody who can operate Shanahan's offense at a high level. But that would be a fascinating storyline if they decided to do that, insulate the quarterback rather than pay the quarterback, which I don't think we've seen yet in this new era of NFL football.
Let's stick with teams that have not lived up to who we thought they would be before we get to the teams that are left standing that should make some noise come playoff time. And I need to get your take on what's fair to say about what Cincinnati's doing with that generational talent under center. I mean, he's so fun. Joe Burrow's so fun to watch play the position, and they're going to miss the postseason. And ultimately, as a Jet fan, I know it's not going to happen, but I would just love if they called Cincinnati and said, what do you want for Joe? We'll give you everything for him. It's not a hot take, Omar. I love watching him play quarterback. What's fair to say about the failures of the Bengals to surround him with a either better cast? I feel like there's talent on the roster. They just have not been able to get stops when they've needed to. Your take on what's gone on this year in Cincinnati?
Yeah, that's a real head-scratcher. It's an interesting team, and obviously why you brought them up, because it is so confounding when you consider that just last year we were talking about Lou Anarumo as one of the great defensive minds in football and was on the getting head coaching interviews. And like you said, they can't get a stop. And I think when you watch the Bengals, without knowing anything about them, but when you watch them, you think, oh, that's a good team. That's a playoff team. Joe Burrow is generational talent. I would expect them to see them play in January, and obviously it hasn't worked out for them. I would say they are more of the, let's just get healthy. Let's kind of run it back for next season. Because I don't think things are changing with Cincinnati. I know they paid Joe Burrow like he deserves to be paid. And I think, I think they need to consistently draft well, because I think, as long as you have that generational quarterback and you're going to have to pay him like that, you're going to need to hit, on like Kansas City has done. They consistently hit well in the draft. So you have so many contributing players on those rookie contracts. I think Cincinnati has yet to really find that, and they've yet to consistently hit on that. And what we're seeing is, holes depleted on the roster because of that. And obviously you can't pay big-time free agents every single year. You can't build a team like that. So I think, they're just a couple draft classes away from kind of, rebuilding that team. But obviously it's frustrating when you have that quarterback and you see him on display play so well. And I think that's what we've seen this year in Cincinnati.
My producer would be upset if I did not ask you about his Dallas Cowboys, who at this point I feel like it's, USC college football gets the benefit of the doubt every year. They're never good. Dallas seems to get the benefit of the doubt every year. They're never good. I know Dak got hurt. And the easy thing to say, Omar, has been the easy thing for a number of years, and that's the dude who owns the team thinks he can do everything, and nobody's ever been able to do that. How did they get this thing turned around? They're pretty much married to Dak, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, obviously they paid him the big bucks, and I think Dak is that good. I think he is a talent, and I think what's happened to them in the past couple postseasons is just unfortunate. It's just I kind of look at it like with the Cowboys. I'm a big Dodger fan, right? And so outside of the COVID year, they go to the playoffs every single year. But even as good as the roster they had, as much of a good payroll they had, it still takes luck in the postseason to win. And so obviously they won this year, and that was great. And I think it's the same thing with the Cowboys. It's in the playoffs, anything can happen. You just have to get yourself in position to get to the playoffs and get to the postseason. I think Dak gives you that chance. And one of these years, it might hit. But they seem to have collected talent on both sides of the ball. Mike McCarthy, has double-digit wins, for a number of years there in Dallas, kind of once he had that struggle in the first year. And, I think it's hard for me to put everything on a coach for what happens in the postseason. And I know that's what it's all about, especially for the Cowboys. You're judged by the Super Bowls. But I just kind of go back to when Marty Schottenheimer was 14-2 with the Chargers, and they lost in the first round, and then they blew them out, because they choked that playoffs, and it seems like the Chargers have been spinning their wheels ever since. So I'm sort of reluctant to blow McCarthy out because of injuries and postseason shortcomings. I think the pieces have been in place. They've just run into bad luck in the playoffs.
All right, let's get over now to some teams certainly still in the entire thing that will have something to say about this in the end. And it's not a hot take to still believe in Kansas City, regardless of Patrick Mahomes' ankle sprain. But that is the deal, and it's unclear whether or not he's going to play on Saturday. And Carson Wentz in as a backup, you could do a lot worse as far as the backup quarterback than Carson Wentz. They're 13-1, but they have been on the razor's edge. For me, it's just been a pretty phenomenal thing to witness the intellectual evolution of Patrick Mahomes into this thinker where he's just going to do what he has to do to make sure that they win, even if it's by 1 point. It's a risky thing to do come playoff time, though. The Patrick Mahomes ankle injury and the current situation with Kansas City, Omar, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think what we're seeing with the Chiefs is what we saw with the Tom Brady Patriots. You remember, like, several years in that run, they weren't always the most talented team. They weren't the best team, but they figured out a way to win on 3 different Sundays in the playoffs and were eventually crowned Super Bowl champions. And I think that's what we're seeing with these Chiefs. They're demonstrating that in the regular season, that, they have enough experience, they have enough belief in each other, they have enough ability to operate calmly in the most chaotic of times within a game. And because of that, they're able to find ways to win. And they're able to do so confidently, convincingly, in those critical moments. And so I think, they'll carry that into the postseason. That, yes, it seems like they're playing with fire, but you kind of watch them on the sidelines. They're sort of in their groove. They're in their element in that way. And as long as you have Mahomes, the ultimate difference maker, it's kind of like Brady. Even when they were down 28-3, they found a way to win. And I think the Chiefs are like that. And so that's sort of what I take from this, crazy close games of a season, week in and week out with Kansas City, that this is essentially sharpening them for the playoffs, and they'll be that much better for it come playoff time.
Could this be Josh Allen's year? Vegas tells us that it is. They're the favorite as of now, according to the Vegas sports book I have in front of me at Vegas Insider at plus 425. Josh is the favorite to win the MVP. Feels like he's run away with that. Could this be the year where Josh gets it done and they actually are the last team standing?
Well, I definitely think he's the MVP, and this seems to be the best team that they've had, since Josh Allen has been, at this MVP caliber type of quarterback. So, yeah, all indications would be that this is probably their best chance, especially given how susceptible Kansas City has looked at times, as we just referenced. But if the road still goes through Arrowhead and, let's say 5 weeks from now, when that conference championship game would be played, that Mahomes' ankle is full strength, I just don't see Buffalo going into Kansas City and winning that AFC championship game. Now, maybe KC gets knocked off the week before in the divisional round after they sat around with the bye and playing with fire too many times, burned them earlier. But if it's Kansas City, Buffalo in Arrowhead, I still like the Chiefs. So other than that scenario, then yeah, if it's going through Orchard Park, no question about it. Book Buffalo's ticket to New Orleans right now. But if it goes through Arrowhead, I would have concern for the Bills.
As of about 3 weeks ago, 2.5, 3 weeks ago, Detroit had climbed up to be the favorite. But according to what I read this morning, Omar, they've lost 12 players from their too deep on defense, including 6 starters. And so, look, if you want to outscore a team 90-89, like that's great. And offensively, they're really good and they're really fun. And who doesn't love Dan Campbell? But are the defensive issues too much for them to overcome? Because come playoff time, the type of offensive just simply outscore the other team, can you do that multiple times to win a Super Bowl? I have a hard time believing they can.
Yeah, I don't either, especially knowing that Philadelphia and how they're constructed is there. And so, right now, I think Philly would be my pick to represent the NFC just because as they proved on Sunday, as they looked to prove on Sunday, they could beat you in a variety of ways. Even when Saquon Barkley, who thrust himself into MVP consideration, is quiet, they're able to get that pass game going. They're going to wear you out. They're going to wear you down. How physical they are in the trenches, in the fourth quarter, in January football. And I just don't see Detroit kind of, because they're so depleted, able to hang in there like that. I think their offensive line is as good and as potent as Philadelphia's, and they too can kind of wear you out and wear you down. But just defensively, like you mentioned, because of those injuries, even if they're playing at home, I still would like Philly to go in there and win that game because of that. Because I think on both sides of the ball, Philly's battle tested, just a couple of years removed from a Super Bowl appearance. So, they're riding high with confidence and they can match. I think physically Philadelphia is the more superior team. I think Detroit plays with the attitude of physicality and they do play physically, but I think from, strength on strength, Philly's the more physical team, especially with those injuries for Detroit. So I think it's going to be tough for them to get through Philadelphia in the playoffs.
Let me follow up on that because I'm with you on the Eagles and have been for a while, but it feels like even though they've won 10 straight and they're one of the top 5 favorites to win the Super Bowl, there are some really smart football people who I respect and know more about it than I do that aren't bought in. Does it feel the same way to you? And if so, what would be the devil's advocate argument on why Philly isn't legitimately a Super Bowl contender this year?
Yeah, I feel like, teams that win the Super Bowl in today's NFL, everybody has to kind of be bought in. Everyone has to be moving in the right direction, the same direction. And when you see, this potential discord with A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts, you see Nick Sirianni, arguing with another coach on the sideline, with Sirianni yelling at fans, it just doesn't seem like they're very harmonious, like a Super Bowl champion would be. So, I would take that to mean that, maybe people are theorizing that there's things happening beneath the surface that will rear its ugly head in the pressure-packed moments in the playoffs. But I kind of see it the other way. I think that edge is what keeps them sharp. And I think that edge is what's kind of caused them to win 10 games in a row. And I think that's kind of maybe Sirianni's leadership style because, I for one, had big questions about them coming into the year, given that Jason Kelsey retired and Fletcher Cox retired, 2 big pillars on each side of the ball that represented a lot of leadership in that locker room, and just kind of wondering where that would come from this year. And maybe these things bubbling to the surface that we've seen that I just referenced on sidelines and whatever is an indication of that, but it hasn't affected their performance on the field. And I don't think it will in playoff time. If you're going to beat Philly, it's going to be because you're better than them that Sunday, not because they're going to beat themselves.
See, I'm with you. I like the iron sharpens iron thing. I kind of like I'm comfortable with the discomfort. Maybe it's because I was a Knick fan in the 90s. Maybe that's kind of the deal. The one team in the top 5, according to Vegas, I haven't asked you about yet is Baltimore. We've got a former Ute, Marcus Williams, on that team. And I've never been a huge fan of the narrative with Lamar come playoff time, but also you can't argue with the record. They're the final team in that top 5 of the odds that I haven't asked you about. What's the, if you expand your horizons, what's the best possible ending for the Ravens this year?
I think winning the Super Bowl is the best, because I think they're a team that, they've had their share of injuries as well, but I think there's such a matchup nightmare with Lamar and Derrick Henry going into the postseason that they could get hot. That style of football can travel. Cold weather, dome, whatever the case may be, I think the Ravens are good enough that the defense you just referenced, Marcus Williams and the rest of that crew, I think they've, it took them a while to get used to Zach Orr's defense. And obviously with Mike McDonald moving on to Seattle, I think, that's natural for them to come together like that or take some time. But I think, Kyle Van Noy, another, proud BYU guy, and playing as well as he's been playing, I think they're getting it on both sides of the ball, big contributions. And I think the talent is there on both sides of the ball to win the Super Bowl. And that's the game I have Saturday. I'll be in Baltimore for that big AFC North clash with the Steelers. So, I'll have a kind of firsthand view of them. And I'm excited to see them in person because, as you know, Spence, kind of when you see these teams in person, you kind of get a better feel for what they are in terms of physicality and attitude and spirit and all that kind of stuff. So, I think they can end up in New Orleans. And maybe this is the year that, Baltimore is the team to upset Patrick Mahomes and then go in and beat Josh Allen. And that would be quite the run and the crowning achievement if Lamar is to win it this year because he would have earned it with the juggernauts that are in the AFC currently.
All right, Omar, before I set you loose, they won't have anything to say about a Super Bowl this year. But as a result of our proximity, we had Garrett Bowles on the show yesterday, who just signed a 4-year extension. We've got Cody Barton down there. We have Devon Vele down there. It's kind of like University of Utah Rocky Mountain Pro style. And the Broncos, to me, have been a really fun, surprising story with what Sean Payton saw in Bo Nix and how Bo Nix has, after a uncomfortable couple of weeks, settled into what I perceive to be a really bright young talent who should be under center there for a long time. So, a thought on what you've seen this year, but what do you think the future holds down in Denver?
Well, I'm bullish on the Broncos. I was with them last Monday on that Monday night game against the Browns. So to see them up close, I think they're good. I think they're legit. I think Bo Nix continues to get better every week. The experience he continues to develop and grow, I think that's real. I think Sean Payton's belief in him obviously has paid off. And I think that defense with Vance Joseph and Patrick Surtain and that crew, Nick Bonito, a couple pick sixes in recent games. And, sometimes they're bend but don't break. Sometimes, they deliver that big play to swing the game. So I think they're becoming a complete team. I think what will be a true indicator of how they are is how they handle that game tomorrow or on Thursday in L.A. on a short week against a good Chargers team, a hungry Chargers team that just got beat or has lost actually a couple in a row now. For all that we've talked about the physicality of Jim Harbaugh and instilling that into the Chargers. Can Denver go in there in sort of a, playoff type of game and win? I think that'll sort of give us a indication because I think they're a legit playoff team. How good can they be in the playoffs? I think we'll find out by how they play on Thursday.
All right, so since you have the Ravens Steelers on Saturday, Omar, after one of your dynamic hits during the broadcast, I want you to give me a Nick Bonito celebration as you get off camera. Can we do that?
Off camera, yeah, and I'll send it to Porter via text.
Okay, fair enough, my friend. Happy holidays. Thanks for the time. Have a good time and travel safe, okay?
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Always a pleasure.
The great Omar Ruiz from the NFL Network. Celebration. You know what? Gritty.
There you go.
I'm going to give you a gritty with a good segment.
I'll screen grab you.
We are on YouTube every day in pajamas.
Look at you.
Had meetings this morning. So if you've ever wanted to see me without pajamas, that sounded weird, go ahead and tune in to the YouTube page because I actually have a collared shirt on today.
Imagine that.
We had a Christmas party.
We did. It was fun.
You didn't dress up.
Was I supposed to?
Did you get a present?
I'm wearing a sweater.
Did you get a white elephant gift?
I won a contest.
What'd you win?
While you were in crosstalk.
What'd you win?
A gift card.
To where?
A Visa one. So wherever I want.
Wherever you want. All right. My White Elephant Exchange, I got a mug and a gift certificate to Starbucks.
There you go.
Pretty exciting. Pretty exciting. You know what else is pretty exciting? Prize Picks. See what I did? Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. New gig at Prize Picks. You can run your game all season long on Prize Picks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. Make your holidays bigger and brighter with Prize Picks, the best place to get real money action while watching your favorite sports. You can now win up to 1,000 times your money on Prize Picks. Prize Picks now offers MasterCard. Join now because this holiday season, Prize Picks is giving away 2 free picks in December, and they're giving away $30+ million in rewards during Picksmas. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700 to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700 to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game all season long. 1 hour down, 3 hours to go. Tim McMahon is our guest coming up next on a Tuesday right here on ESPN 700. Woke up like it was Christmas morning, could feel the excitement, wondered why, forgot what day it was. Then I realized today is the final of the NBA Cup in Vegas. We go live to Vegas now, where our guy Tim McMahon is splitting eights and aces, realizes that two could be the dealer's wild. Tim, are we up or down so far in Vegas?
We are even because I have not bet one single nickel on this trip.
And promise me that you will not. You realize that that is a death sentence at those tables, yes?
I am well aware of how all these large casinos have been built.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. You're a smart guy. Hey, I'll tell you what. We could do worse than this matchup, right? Bucks Thunder tonight at T-Mobile. What do you make of what we could see tonight?
Yeah, and listen, it's funny because both of these franchises are kind of miffed that they were left out of the Christmas showcase this year. And so here they are. They've got the stage to themselves. And, you know, these might be the two leading MVP candidates at this point of the season. That's obviously debatable because Joker is so good. You know, the Nuggets have kind of poked their head above that play-in territory that I think he has to be out of to really be candidates to be MVP again. But obviously, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Giannis Antetokounmpo, these guys are both having unbelievable seasons. And the Bucks, bad start. They've won 12 of 15, and I am really excited to see how Giannis and Dame fare against a defense that is the best in the league by a healthy margin, by a couple of points per 100 possessions.
So, and I want to follow up about OKC in a moment, but just in the space of the NBA Cup, you know, I watched the semifinals, and just from a television standpoint, the crowd didn't seem to be all that into it. It looked like more of like a corporate crowd of sponsors and such. And I think, Tim, for this thing to really take, you know, kind of the next step forward, if there was a crowd that felt like there was a lot on the line, it would make a difference. So what's the feel like down there? Is there legitimate buzz that this NBA Cup final is something people are really interested in?
You know, like, look, they got fortunate last year that the Lakers were in it, and obviously the Lakers, in addition to being the most popular NBA franchise, it's a short drive, you know, about a 4-hour drive to L.A., so it was essentially a Lakers home type of atmosphere last year. That's not the case this year. I would say the crowds have been fine. You know, they were fortunate that the Falcons happened to be playing Monday Night Football in Vegas, so there were a lot of Atlanta people in town, you know, some let's go Hawks type of chants, that sort of thing were going on. You know, it's not like this has been a tough ticket. I'm curious to see what the crowd's like tonight. And, you know, there is some talk about it being a championship game only in Vegas type of thing moving forward, where there's been playoff type of intensity in terms of these knockout games. And look, obviously part of that is players want the money, you know, a $500,000 bonus to the players that are on winning teams, you know, all those kind of things. But, you know, you give these guys something to compete for, a title to compete for midway through the season. It's absolutely added some juice to it. And I really like the format where everything counts in the regular season as well. It's just, you know, extra incentive on top of those games until obviously this game. Another tweak I would like to see happen, though, I think the winner of the championship, I think the win should count in regular season standings. And in other words, it'd kind of be like the ultimate tiebreaker where the loss will. But I think that would reward, you know, just another reward for a franchise that's able to get through this thing and win the title.
It's really difficult to, from a media standpoint, whether you're a writer or you blab into a microphone or you do a little TV, to try to make the Jazz interesting at all this year. But the OKC thing, and look, this is a loose parallel, but Oklahoma City, like if you don't like Salt Lake, Oklahoma City, if you've ever been there, all due respect, I'll take Salt Lake City. So this is a market where we can draw some parallels. Respectfully to my friends down in OKC. I've been there a couple times. I prefer where I live. But, and obviously what Sam Presti has done to make them awesome now and set themselves up to be awesome forever should be celebrated. The Athletic did their, you know, Sam Amick and those guys do a great job, and they did the front office rankings, and OKC was one. He pulled a bunch of other NBA execs. So from a market-to-market standpoint, try to draw some comparison and some hope that maybe the whole market thing is something we can throw out the window because of what Sam has built there. But before we get into what they're doing this year, What do you make of the way Sam Presti and that front office have gone about building this thing up to be awesome now and in a position to be great for a long time?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's been a very patient rebuild, and obviously they were able to stockpile picks, and they still have just a massive stockpile. And I think you'll continue to see them trading quantity for potential quality down the road to keep that pipeline coming. They also got extremely fortunate. This is the only time in NBA history that a team was able to essentially trade the rights of a future Hall of Famer without ever having that guy on the roster. And I'm talking about Kawhi Leonard, of course. Like that Paul George trade, Paul George had a ton of value by himself at that point. I mean, he was, I think, third in MVP voting that previous year, and, an all-NBA player. But the reason they were able to get so much from the Clippers is because they were essentially saying, hey, we'll help deliver Kawhi Leonard to you there in L.A. With this Paul George deal. And you get Shai Gilgeous-Alexander from that. And then, the picks are like Jalen. They didn't think they were going to get a lottery pick that early out of that deal, but they did. That's Jalen Williams, a bona fide co-star on a team that was number one seed in the Western Conference last year. They might get another lottery pick or two out of that deal. So, I mean, what a foundation to start from. And look, the Jazz, they don't have a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander type of talent on the roster. It's going to be hard to get that type of talent. But having SGA and SGA developing into an MVP candidate, that's what really accelerated the rebuild as much as anything for Oklahoma City.
Yeah, well said, because while I try to do the parallels between teams that have been rebuilding and now have a little bit of hope, because the Jazz are rebuilding with very little hope, and it's a fan base that's pretty bummed out. Like Orlando has Paulo, right? And OKC has Shea, and the Jazz have Lowry, and Lowry's very, very good. But until you get that guy, it's hard to see the forest through the trees. But let's go back to OKC about what stands out most to you. We had Tom Haberstroh on yesterday, and I watched the OKC Jazz game about, I think you were there, if I remember correctly, and I haven't seen every single game they play, but every time I dial in on them, I keep using this parallel. They're like safeties in football on defense. They're ball hawks. There's no room. And so, ultimately, I feel like they have separated themselves a bit in the West. But what do you like most about this group that we have in front of us, even without Chet and without Hartenstein at the beginning? They've just been the best team in the West. I don't think there's any argument there.
They are 17-2, and they have a 7-footer available for the entire game.
Oh,
3 of their losses came during that little. One was the game Chet got hurt, which was he played like 5 minutes and change in that game. Then they lost 2 more games during that little stretch where Chet was out and Hartenstein hadn't fully recovered from the broken hand yet. But they've got a big man. They're 17-2.
It's wild.
This is, this team it's an awesome team. And again, we start with the fact they've got a bona fide MVP candidate, maybe the MVP favorite at this point in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, but they are loaded. They are loaded with depth, and they are loaded with two-way talent. There are no weak points to attack defensively. Look, they have maybe, I would say, 3 of the top 10 perimeter defenders in the league. Like Lou Dort, the fact he has not been all defensive team yet is insane. It's ridiculous. It's embarrassing for the voters. He's one of the best stoppers in the league. You know what Caruso is, and you mentioned a ball hawk. Like, he is elite in that regard. Cason Wallace, he is the best defender that people don't really know about. You're starting to learn about him. And then, Jalen Williams is a guy who's averaging 2 steals a game. He doesn't have to take one of the top 2 or 3 toughest defensive assignments anymore, but he's capable of that. It's just, as you said, they are so good defensively, not just getting stops, but getting turnovers that turn into offense. And then, they have a guy who's going to average 30 points efficiently to run the show on the other end.
So a thought on tonight, and ultimately, as you referenced, Milwaukee's really turned it around after a rough start. I know Middleton at last check was game time. Maybe you have information as to whether or not he's going to play. Of course, he means a lot to them. He's always been one of the more underrated, really good players in pro basketball, a guy that went for a 40-piece in the NBA Finals. We're big Dame fans around here, so excited to see them turn it around. What do these two teams do well, and what do you make of this matchup? OKC is a 5.5-point favorite.
Yeah, I mean, OKC, again, defensively, one of the most dominant defenses we've seen in recent NBA history. Shea's just smooth as could be. He's going to get his 30. Jalen Williams, a legitimate all-star type of talent. But still the one, potential flaw for this OKC team is they're still pretty small. With Hartenstein, that helps. He's not just a double-double guy, but a dozen guy, dozen points, dozen rebounds. But like last year, and Mark Daigneault mentioned this, they were physically mauled, is the way he put it, when they went to Milwaukee to play against the Bucks. And Giannis had 30 and 19 in that game. And, OKC's not unique in this regard, but they don't have a great matchup for Giannis. It's obviously going to have to be a team thing. But if Milwaukee's going to win this game, I think it's because Giannis just has the kind of performance that reminds you as a two-time MVP, a finals MVP, and a guy who still has a chance to add to that trophy collection.
Malik McMiniman is announcing that Chris Middleton is doubtful for the NBA Cup. Is that? Yeah. She just tweeted out NBA Cup final against Oklahoma City. Middleton is doubtful tonight. So that's out there as well. Has Milwaukee's recent resurgence rethought your place in the East at all with them?
Listen, they have a chance because they have such a big time star duo. I think it's pretty apparent and obvious to say that everybody in the East and really everybody in the league is chasing the Boston Celtics. And I know Cleveland's gotten off to an amazing start. I would be surprised if somebody other than the Celtics came out of the Eastern Conference. Milwaukee's one of the team that you give a puncher's chance. But if the Celtics are healthy, I don't think last year's title will be the only one that group wins. I'll put it like that.
I agree with you there. Have you seen enough from OKC to feel like the narrative in the West should be the same as it is in the East? Everybody is really chasing one team.
Yeah, well, I would say that I'm not going to go that far simply because they haven't done it yet, right? The Celtics have done it. They've won the East twice in the last few years. They've won a championship. This Oklahoma City squad, last year was their first taste of playoffs. They got knocked out by the Mavericks. So Oklahoma City is the most talented team, is the best team. But I don't think you can say everybody's chasing the Thunder when the Thunder haven't won it yet. The Thunder are they're chasing getting out of the West for the first time. I think they're the best team. I think the Mavericks are the second best team. I think we'll have a little Red River Western Conference Finals. The Thunder have established themselves as the favorite, but I promise you this, the guys in the Mavericks locker room, they're not looking at it as they're chasing Oklahoma City. They're looking at it as Oklahoma City's trying to take their West title away from them.
I have nothing interesting to ask you about the Jazz. So I was thinking about this when I saw you on the rundown today. Here's what I'll ask. I mean, you're the guy for this franchise from the national big picture perspective, and I know that you're a pro at creating relationships, and you know the guys down there, and you know Zanuck, and I know you know Will, and I'm just wondering if you've had any conversations with them, because look, it doesn't make for great sports talk radio. Here's the deal. They're well aware of what they're doing. And, there's nothing I can say that they don't know. They know that they're not in a good place. And I can't imagine the frustration for Will as a competitor night in and night out. I'm watching that Clipper game last night. It didn't even look like two pro teams. It was unfair. And the Clippers are just average. They're without most of their, some of their better talent. But what are the nature of the conversations you have with Jazz brass, front office, ownership, coaches? And is this just pain tolerance and we're going to suck it up and a long game type thing? Illuminate us a little bit on some intel if you have any.
I mean, they have to play the long game. And the last couple of years, if we're being honest, they were too competitive for their own good. And then, they kind of pull the plug come trade deadline and you end up mid to late lottery picks. This team needs at least one high lottery pick, if not a couple, to really provide the foundation to get back to where they want to be. And, they knew going into the season, this was going to be a long, painful, miserable season. And they just had to have that level of pain tolerance, and it's not fun. Now, Will Hardy, I think, has proven if you give him pieces, he can win games, right? This is a completely different kind of challenge because player development, it can be used as a euphemism for talent, but they are legitimately trying to develop / evaluate the young talent on the roster. And when you know it's going to be this sort of a season where, if we're being just blunt about it, the primary goal is you end up with a golden lottery ticket out of this deal. You don't want bad habits to creep in. You don't want young players to accept, losing and have that losing mentality creep in. And that's a really tough challenge, I think, for a coach in this situation.
I'm going to ask you point blank a question I was asked on a show I did a week ago for my buddy who does a Nick podcast. When the Jazz are good again, and not just 35 wins, when they're one of the teams in the West that is throwing punches, who on this roster is on that team?
I mean, listen, there's no guarantees, first of all, because there's not an untouchable on the roster. Obviously, Larry Markkinen is not being traded this year, and they see him as a major piece for when this thing turns around, but there's no guarantee there. Something could come up where it makes sense to move him once he's allowed to be traded again. I would say the same thing about Walker Kessler. You asked me who are the guys who are most likely. I would start with those two. I think Cody Williams is going to end up being a good NBA player. Obviously, he's not anywhere near that right now. But, I was talking to somebody in the Hawks front office this week when they were in Vegas, and they mentioned that he was one of the 4 guys that they were really evaluating as a potential number 1 pick. They knew it was going to be a 3 or 4 year process for him to develop, but they felt like he had the talent to potentially end up being the best player in this class. So, it's, again, I would say Markkinen, I would say Kessler, and I would say we'll see. But I think some of these young guys are going to end up being quality NBA players.
All right, before I set you loose, this is the time of year after that deadline comes and goes. Now about 87% of the league can be traded, and the one name that has surfaced is Jimmy Butler, who could actually make a difference. And, Shams, your guy over at ESPN taking over for Woj, he did float out the scenario of Phoenix kicking the tires there. And I'll tell you what, Tim, I went to the Jazz Suns game last Friday, and it was never really in doubt. But there's something with the Suns that I think they could utilize, somebody with the bite like Jimmy Butler has when Jimmy's head is right. And obviously Brad Beal can't stay healthy. I feel like if Phoenix goes all in on making the Butler move, that's something that could change things out this way. Any intel as to whether or not that's a real possibility? And if not, where do you think Jimmy goes?
Well, the problem is, number one, Bradley Beal's got a no-trade clause, and I think he would waive that to go to Miami. But Miami, I cannot see the Miami Heat trading for Bradley Beal with that no-trade clause intact.
Yeah.
I think he would waive it to go to Miami. I don't think he would waive it on a permanent basis. Just like he was able to hold on to that when he accepted the trade to Phoenix. And frankly, look, if Miami wanted Beal that badly, they would have got him the first time around when it was known that was his preferred destination. And if Miami's going to commit $110 million to a 30-something-year-old player over the next couple of years, I think they would have just signed Jimmy to an extension. So I think that deal absolutely would make sense from the Suns' perspective. I just don't think Miami will bite on it. For a variety of reasons. If you had me guess the most likely destination, I would still say the Golden State Warriors. They've got, obviously, they've been kind of big game hunting for a little while. They were trying to talk about Markkinen, the Paul George thing over the summer. So that would be the most likely. As far as Houston, the Rockets front office has been very adamant. They're not looking to get a mid-30s guy. They're looking to let it play out this year. And if they add somebody that's a star in his 20s, a star early or entering his prime, things could change. But that one would surprise me. And then, Dallas, that I would be just shocked by that. They'd have to give up half of their rotation and then commit to having Jimmy making $50+ million next year going forward, as well as Kyrie and Luka. That's going to be tough to build out a championship caliber supporting cast around that.
If you had to put the Tim McMahon paycheck on one Jazz player getting moved prior to the deadline, who is that player and why?
First of all, I would never put, if I'm not going to put a nickel down in Vegas, I'm not going to put my paycheck on somebody getting traded. I'll put it to you like that.
Fair enough.
Jordan Clarkson, Colin Sexton would be the two, bucket getters that I think could help good teams. And then, obviously there's a possibility with John Collins. I still think the fact he's making $25 million next year makes that a little bit more difficult, but he's obviously had a very efficient season this year to, maybe there's a team that would be willing to bite on him.
All right, Tim, we'll set you loose. Enjoy that game tonight. Thanks for the time, buddy. We'll chat soon.
All right, appreciate you, brother.
All right, great, Tim McMahon. The NBA Cup final is tonight. How many of our listeners do you think knew that when they woke up today it was the final of the Emirates NBA Cup?
All of them.
Very few of them.
You're big in the NBA sphere.
Yeah, it's just, I was thinking about this doing the prep this morning. Did you watch any of the Jazz Clippers game last night?
A little bit.
It was
on.
It was a joke.
I should say it was on the TV.
I turned it off at halftime. I never turn Jazz games off. Like, James Harden got whatever, and it's James Harden. It goes back to Will's press conference after the Laker game when Dalton Knecht hit 8 threes. He's like, yeah, everyone in the arena knew that Dalton was about to shoot the three, except for the players that apparently were playing for the team. Play a little defense. Do something. Like, I'm watching them yelling at the TV, like, take away his airspace. Like, get up into him. Make it uncomfortable. They were warm-up practice, walk in off the dribble or off the catch threes for James Harden, who I believe is second all-time in three-point shots made. Like, I'm not a Harden guy, but know the personnel a little bit.
Did you ever hear, before Kobe passed away, like pretty close before he passed away, him talking about accidental basketball?
Yes.
Well, here we are.
Yeah. It's tough, man. I mean, it's funny because I try to look at these teams in order to do the show and cover the Jazz and cover the league. I look at teams like Orlando. I look at teams like Oklahoma City. I look at teams like Houston, who not too long ago were kind of in this same area where the Jazz are at. Houston's an interesting one because, Orlando has Paolo, who's awesome. Of course, OKC has Shea, who might be the MVP. Who is Houston's best player? Şengün? Jalen Green? Van Vliet? Like, they don't have a franchise-changing all-star piece either, and they're probably 2 or 3 steps ahead against the Jazz. They're just, I don't know. Covering the Jazz this year has been a challenge that I don't think I've had in 18 years covering the Jazz in this market.
Yeah. I'm probably higher on Şengün. I don't know that he's like a superstar, but that's a really good piece. Going forward, though, yeah, you're not wrong. It's tough to really dial into when there's just not much to cover. There's not even many storylines to look at, right? You can watch the Jazz to see like what Will Hardy's going to dial up on the out of bounds. You can get like a good feel of maybe his scheme, his plays. Outside of that, man, yeah, that's about it as far as storyline watching when it comes to Jazzline.
I want to inject truth serum into 2 people in the Jazz front office and sit down with them for a half hour. Yes.
Truth serum.
Yes.
Is that legal?
Well, it's not. And not like this would happen. But I would like to do this with 2 people in the Jazz front office. Who do you think it is?
Will's not the front office, right? So
no, Will's one of them.
Will is one of them.
Will's one of them.
I'm going to say Zanuck.
Zanuck. It's those 2. I want to sit down with Will Hardy and Justin Zanuck and be like, guys, let's talk it out. How you feeling?
Yeah.
Because I honestly think those 2 have a little bit of a different – how do I tiptoe my way around here? I think Will and Justin have a little bit of a more direct, authentic side of them than maybe some of the other folk. And, when you utilize your charisma and your competitiveness to make sure that you're building something great.
There you go.
Or if you just want to golf. I'm not sure how dialed into the whole, like, just how hard this is for some people. But I think Will and Justin would have a very unique perspective on this if you could get them in a very honest moment.
You're probably right. And, any coach in any GM type role where your job is to win and your current job description is not really to do that, man, it's got to be tough. It's got to be so conflicting. And I wonder, Spence, how you manage relationships, how you manage like a day-to-day vibe when that's the case. It's got to be tough. And the Jazz are dealing with that right now. And yeah, truth serum would be fun, but I don't know where that is.
Until we can get the truth serum, we're going to have to rely on a mix of charisma, competitiveness, love of sport, and unrelenting persistence. The D News wrote that and sent it to ESPN. It is wild.
It's a lot.
It is a lot. You know, I'm not usually with the Youngs with their sayings, but that one works here.
It's a lot. You can read it. It's a lot.
Extra?
It's there's plenty there, Spence.
No cap. There we go. All right, we'll catch a quick break. Tim McMahon, NBA Daily Assist Out, brought to you by About Time Pub, Utah's premier sports bar. Amazing food and killer cocktails. Make About Time your place for sports or even brunch. All food is made from scratch, and they've got new mocktails for those of you who don't partake in alcohol. More TVs than tables. All About Time TVs have their own receiver. So we're going to have all the games going live. Free high-speed Wi-Fi makes it a great place to, quote, work from home. Keep About Time in mind for all of your holiday parties this Christmas season. Their locations are in Ogden, Layton, West Valley, West Jordan, Sandy, Tooele, Harriman, Bluffdale, Lehigh, and Vineyard. Utah Sports Bar celebrating the 15-year anniversary. In-house smoked wings, fresh made from scratch food. Brunch availables on the weekends from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., including a build-your-own Bloody Mary bar. They have every UFC event without a cover charge. They're home for every sport, college and pro. More information online at abouttimepub.com. All right, coming up next, the University of Utah football program, the latest on the transfer portal. Isaac Wilson is back. Who are the next targets? We'll talk about that. We'll do some pro and college football coming up on the other side. Zach Harper joins us. So does Dave Fox before we say goodnight at 6 on this random, like 50-degree sunny December day here in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah. Keep it right here on ESPN 700. New York Yankees made a move today trying to replace Juan Soto, who's high speed ahead to a team that will win 65 to 75 games and never do anything exciting. Shot across your bow, young man. Juan Soto headed across the borough to bat 285, hit 42 home runs, have 113 RBIs for a team that's going to win 70 games.
70?
More than that.
We'll win 90 games.
We'll
get the wild card.
I'll tell you what, Steve Cohen's not messing around, and that dude has more money than any Major League Baseball owner, but the Yankees have acquired Cody Bellinger in a trade with the Chicago Cubs. It's not nothing.
It's not nothing, and yeah, Cohen's not messing around. The thing about baseball is, of course, there's different salary rules. There's different, you can, in a way, buy a roster that can go out and contend for a World Series. You can't really do that in other sports, so while I'm optimistic and excited about it, there's also kind of a different feeling with baseball. It's more like almost like you're investing in something and you're going to win. It's less like a team that you cheer for, at least in my eyes, just because it does feel so much like Steve Cohen is just trying to buy a World Series roster, although I hope he does so.
Well, most teams that win World Series spend a lot of money on their roster.
Yeah.
The Dodgers a year ago, the Yankees for years, evil empire. So the Yankees trying to rebuild after losing Soto to the Mets. NBA has officially announced their all-star tournament format. I'm quite sure none of you care about that. So, Porter, let's move on to how we started the show, and that is some good news for Utah football. It's funny, Bill Sneaky yesterday saying that he had heard that a lot of the players, let's be clear. He said some of the players in the transfer portal he is being told are very likely to come back and play for Utah. And the first domino fell as Isaac Wilson has elected to come back and compete. And I'm proud of him. I think it's cool. Again, there are plenty of things in this day and age of college football you have to keep in mind and take into consideration. I don't know what that NIL check looks like. I don't know what he was unable to receive on the open market. There are a lot of rumors about him flirting with BYU, but BYU has a quarterback that this season has played really well, and they're in the Alamo Bowl after a 10-win season, so Jake will be back under center next year for BYU. Devin Dampier obviously commits to Utah, a New Mexico quarterback who played for Jason Beck, the new offensive coordinator last year. But, Porter, I kind of like just if we take it in this direction that Isaac is going to show up and compete and try to win that starting job.
Well, and that was and should have been the plan before, right? It wasn't for Isaac Wilson to come in and be ready to start for what was then a Cam Rising within a couple of weeks. That was not ever what Utah wanted to do. So this gives them an opportunity, Spence, to kind of reset for Isaac Wilson. I think it's a good thing for him too, right? There was a lot of heat on him. I know he's dealt with a lot of pressure, something that he can probably learn from his brother a little bit with, right? But this gives him a chance to kind of reset, learn another offense in Jason Beck's that, while it will have shades of what Andy Ludwig did, he's going to be in the study room again. He's going to be in the classroom again, learning an offense that Devin Dampier, for the most part, already knows. So for Isaac Wilson coming into this year, I really be healthy, be ready in case you are needed as far as the reps go. But this is if you go into kickoff with a Devin Dampier as a starter and probably, hopefully, Spence, another quarterback or two in some form or fashion in that room, Isaac's just got to learn, stay healthy, and be ready to go in 2025, 2026, because I think that is really the timetable for him and the best path for him, although, again, injuries can change that in a instant.
He's still so young, man. He still has so much football left ahead. And as I talked about to start the show, my fear was Isaac was going to land in a really good spot, learn behind a really good quarterback, and then take over and fly, because he does have that type of arm talent. I think there's a fair argument to be made. And look, as I talked about with Zachariah during Crosstalk today, I'm not going to tell you I watched every second of New Mexico football a year ago, but after Kyle and Morgan and whoever hired Jason, and after Devin signed on the dotted line, you can go watch a bunch of film. Isaac, to me, has a livelier arm. I'd say he's got a better arm than Devin. I don't know that he runs the way Devin does, and Devin's going to have the inside track because he knows Jason. But I'm telling you, man, and also talking to Scott Mitchell about Isaac last year, you go watch that kid warm up. I mean, those Wilson boys can throw a football. I mean, Isaac has a lively arm. I think there's a case to be made that it might be even better than Devin's.
Yeah, and I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that, where I don't think he's anywhere close to a Devin Dampier or a lot of quarterbacks that are starting is with the progressions. It's with the after the ball is snapped, right? And you are trying to figure out what's going on in front of you. You're trying to dissect a coverage. You're trying to, figure out an option route for your second wide receiver. That stuff for Isaac is just so far behind, and that's not necessarily his fault. That's him being in there and being put in a position that he's not quite ready for. But to your point, the physical stuff is there. The ability to spin it down the field is there. His deep ball is, when he gets a good read on it and when it doesn't look like a punt, because I think there was a lot of times this year where Isaac just said, hey, I'm not getting a good feel of this play, but I know I've got a receiver 40 yards downfield. I'm just going to huck it up there. That happened way too much for Isaac Wilson in 2024, but you also could see that he can spin the ball down the field. I don't think he's pushing for the starting job this year, or next year, sorry. I don't think that's a realistic thing for Isaac Wilson this year. I don't think it should be, but again, he needs to be ready. He needs to be confident in that offense in case whoever is starting, from my estimation right now, Devin Dampier goes down, and you do need to go to your backup quarterback.
Well, the other thing that we haven't discussed is I don't know where Isaac is at in the rehab process with the injury. Do you have any insight as to whether or not, is he even going to be ready to compete come springtime?
Yeah, the goal is for him to be ready to go for spring ball, for everything that, is he going to be taking tackles? No, but I don't think very many quarterbacks are, if any, through much of the spring. So the thought and the hope is that Isaac is good to at least go through the motions and at least go through a lot of the install of the offense for spring and so on. So, yeah, for Utah, it should be Devin Dampier. They'll have Isaac Wilson hopefully ready and healthy by then. And then with the rest of the quarterback room, we're still kind of waiting in the wings for.
So a couple of other names to watch out for. We talked to Josh Furlong yesterday, Porter, about the Wayshawn Parker kid. So Devin Dampier, number 7 quarterback in the portal. He was ranked the 7th best quarterback in the portal, according to ESPN's rankings. Wayshawn Parker, who played last year up on the Palouse for Wazoo, is the number 2 ranked running back in the portal. I haven't seen anything official. I don't live online, so if I missed it, I apologize. I know he has whittled his list down to 2, and Utah's on that list. Running back's an issue. Running back right now, kind of like quarterback, is a situation where you want to stack that room with talent, and then iron sharpens iron, and let him go at it and see who's ready come fall. Any thoughts on what we could see from Wayshawn Parker from Wazoo, who's in the portal as of now?
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, he is kind of whittled his list down to Arizona and Utah. He kind of eliminated USC and UCLA yesterday. And if you're the Utes, you got to feel good about your position to get a player when he's narrowed his list down to those 2 schools, especially when you're moving on from a back in Mekhi Bernard, who just had a 1,000-yard season. And, of course, you're here at Utah, a school that is really respected when it comes to producing running backs. I mean, you go through even just the last decade, it's Devontae Booker, it's Zach Moss, it's, you can even put Tavion Thomas, guys who didn't work out at the next level but had really, really productive years here at the University of Utah. You can almost expect, if you're the bell cow for the Utes, to have 700, 800, 900, even a 1,000-yard season. And for that reason, they're right there with this Wayshawn Parker stuff. I think it does, Spence, come down in a lot of ways to the NIL factor. That's just going to be something that we're going to get used to when we're talking about the final decision in a lot of these situations. But Utah feels good about where they are with Wayshawn Parker and adding him to a running back room that they've already added a few pieces to this offseason.
UCLA lost the Branch brothers today. Zachariah Branch and Zion Branch entered the NCAA transfer portal. USC at this point, I'm sorry if you don't like this, they are the Dallas Cowboys of college football. Every year, They're going to be good. People treated Clay Helton as if he was this moron. And ultimately, Lincoln Riley has not done many things that Clay Helton did not do. It felt like there was a moment in time with Caleb, but Utah ended that. Southern Cal at this point, man, like, is it time to just stop talking about them the way we did when Pete Carroll was around? Because it feels like they just get the benefit of the doubt every single year.
I mean, it is for now. Football's cyclical, but I have stopped talking about USC in that way 6 years ago because it just, you have to have a foundation there for all of the other things to work. All of the flashy, the 5-star wide receivers, the big name quarterbacks, that's all good in plenty, but you're not going to get anything from it, at least in the form of like postseason wins and bowl games and playoff appearances. You're just not going to get that if the foundation isn't there around it. And for USC, yeah, they got the big name head coach. They've got the quarterbacks. They've usually got good wide receivers. But what's going on with your recruiting? What's going on with your defensive line staff, right? Those are the things that you just have to have in order if you're going to have any sort of success. And it seems like a mess at Southern California outside of a few of those bright spots, which are, as they are every year, Spence, the dudes, right? Stop talking about it like that. I don't want to hear that USC has a good roster coming into the year again. Cool. Put it on the field and win some football games. Until you start doing that, I'll just roll my eyes at the preseason rankings and do so like we have probably 2018, last time they had a competitive team in that regard, before, as you mentioned, the Caleb Williams run that Utah did have a pretty heavy hand in ending.
USC might be the one job I could see Kalani leaving for. I know BYU just extended him, well-deserved after a great year in the Big 12, but Southern California kid, and at the end of the day, it is USC. I don't know what Kalani's making at BYU, but I guess it wouldn't be near what he would be making at USC. I think Lincoln's buyout is a cool $70 million.
It's big. I'm probably with you there. I think we talked about it a few years ago when Kalani was interviewing with a few schools. He spoke to Washington. I think he talked to Oregon at one point. And that's the only way I ever see Kalani leaving BYU. Not only would it have to be the right timing, right? Things would have to get a little iffy in Provo. But I also do think that it would have to be the right fit for Kalani, which, yeah, it would be a West Coast school, or it would be like literally a sweetheart offer from like a Bama or somebody. It's USC, it's Oregon, and then it's staying at BYU. It's really the only real options that I see getting Kalani to maybe move off of the situation he's in now.
Speaking of Alabama, according to, I believe it's Matt Zenitz from 24/7 Sports, Cameron Calhoun visiting Alabama, former Utah cornerback Cameron Calhoun visiting Alabama. If he's receiving that type of interest, I know people are holding out hope, but that feels like that might be time to say goodbye.
Well, could be. It could be. Bama has, obviously got bigger pockets than just about anyone in the country when we're talking NIL collectives. We're talking about those kind of connections. What I will tell you is, although this was technically not when this was above board, Bama and Utah have been in a bidding war before, and Utah ended up winning it out for a certain particular tight end that ended up coming back and pairing up with Cam Rising for a pretty good senior season before his year with the Buffalo Bills.
Thomas Yasmin.
Dalton.
Oh.
Kincaid.
All right.
Bama really tried to pry Dalton Kincaid from Utah in that offseason, and they offered him, let's just say, a lot of things, a big coin purse. And this is something that was, let's be clear, before a certain case was put through the courts on the NCAA. So this has been going on for a long time. Bama has and will continue to have the upper hand. And, yeah, Cam Calhoun is in Tuscaloosa today. So think of that what you will.
Last one. Caught off guard when I saw the tweet that Nate Johnson was in Salt Lake City. Now, Nate, of course, much like Isaac a year ago, was put in a tough spot to try to fill the large shoes left behind when Cameron Rising went down. One thing that you could see, regardless of what you thought of him as a quarterback, is the type of athlete that he is. I don't know if it would be like I don't know, Nate, you're the fourth string quarterback. We're going to try you as we're going to try you on defense. We're going to put in a wildcat package. He hasn't committed to come back, but what do you make of what that could look like if Nate Johnson signs to come back to play for the Utes?
Exactly what you were saying. It would be a situation where Utah isn't necessarily planning on making him their quarterback, but they have seen what he is able to do with the ball in his hands. They've seen what he is able to do, in space. Get him out in the open field, Spence, and he can do some special things. We saw it against Baylor. We saw it in flashes during the season. So if Nate is open to that, and he's open to, taking a back seat and not being the quarterback, because that was something that I think a lot of fans were not privy of, was Nate had been asked to not play quarterback but still play. They wanted him to be part of the offense, and Nate was not happy. Even though he was getting carries, even though he was catching the ball out of the backfield, he was still being productive in some ways. He was not happy because he wanted to play quarterback. He played quarterback growing up. He identified as a quarterback as much as you can. If he's gotten over that to the point where he can come to an agreement with these coaches and be productive on the field, I only see it being beneficial for both sides.
All right. We are going to catch a quick break. We'll catch up with Zach Harper. We're going to do some more local college football with Dave Fox. I'll be on TV tonight. Not with Dave, though, with the GOAT, with Adam Mikulich, 1035 KMYU. We call that 5 Questions with Spence. No, we don't. Tonight's Talking Jazz. 5 Questions with Spence is a different situation that we do on that TV station every couple of weeks. So stay tuned. 1035 tonight, KMYU. I'll be hanging out with Adam. So Zach will stop by coming up next. Then it's Dave Fox. Let's welcome in Jeff from Farmer and Chemist on a Tuesday. Jeff, happy Tuesday. How are you?
Happy Tuesday. Great. Thank you.
Appreciate the time today. So Farmer and Chemist, CBD products, and folks are probably not very educated because it's kind of new to market, but it's a very effective, non-addicting, there's really the same side effects, the side effects you get with heavy sleep meds or pain meds, they don't exist with the CBD treatments. Let's start out with sleep because that's what you've helped me with. How can you, Jeff, help people sleep better and maybe get them off some of those heavy sleep meds?
Yeah, so to your point, we are a pharmacist-centric company, and we follow the science. CBD's been around for hundreds and thousands of years, but it's only been legal for a little while. So there is a lack of understanding. It's not medical cannabis, but what we've done is we've combined a few different cannabinoids, CBD and CBN, and sometimes with a little THC, and that combination is fantastic for sleep and anxiety, and you don't get the withdrawal effects that you get with a prescription medication, and you don't feel groggy in the morning. It's really, really effective and very, very safe.
So I keep a little case of the balm that you guys gave me in my golf bag because I have this tennis elbow that pops up. I think it's called Problem Solved. And so for our folks out there that have some arthritic pain or maybe muscle soreness, how can you help them alleviate that pain and maybe get them off some pain meds?
Yeah, and that's where the science is a little bit different. So that is a combination of CBD and CBG. So it's a different cannabinoid, which has fantastic anti-inflammatory properties. So that combination is great. And to your point, you can take it topically and put it on areas that are bothersome, like an elbow or a knee, or part of your back. If you have arthritis or other more systemic pain, then you can take it in other forms that are more systemic, like a liquid that you put under your tongue. And so it's really important, I think, to talk to a pharmacist, talk to us. We will kind of walk through the pros and cons of different routes and things like that. But similar to avoiding the side effects with the sleep product is these things don't go through the liver and the kidney like NSAIDs and acetaminophen. So they're also very, very safe in addition to working differently, but also having pain and anti-inflammatory properties.
We all love our pets, our furry little buddies, and you guys have some interesting treatments for pets that might be experiencing some anxiety and things like that. Jeff, tell us about it.
Yes. So pets, dogs feel the same emotions that we do in a lot of cases. So they have anxiety, they have pain, depression, and it works the same way in dogs. And so we have the tinctures or the liquid that you can sprinkle in the food, which is great. And we also have very tasty dog treats that have CBD in them that are effective, but they also help modify behavior. So a few different options there as well.
All right, Jeff, you have a special offer for our listeners this holiday season. Let's hear about it.
Yeah, mention ESPN 700 and either online or in the store, and we will take 20% off an order. And through the holidays, we are also offering a 10% discount on gift cards, and that can be used in combination with the ESPN discount. So that's up to a 30% discount. So great time to try it. Great time for gift ideas as well.
All right, definitely check out their spot. It's a great place on historic Main Street in Midvale. Go online to farmerandchemist.com. Jeff, thank you, sir. Have a great week and happy holidays, okay?
Thanks. Happy holidays.
All right, my buddy Jeff from Farmer and Chemist. 2 hours down, 2 hours to go. Coming up on the other side, it's Zach Harper, Dave Fox. That's your 4 o'clock hour of the drive. Keep it right here on ESPN 700. Just out of curiosity, do you and Zach discuss which horrible pit bull track you're going to play and ruin everybody's day, or do you just choose one?
Occasionally, but this one was me, so you'll have to get the feedback from Z.
Zach Harper on a Tuesday. You know what time it is. You already know because it's Pitbull. Do you have a Mount Rushmore of Pitbull songs, or do you celebrate their entire catalog?
Oh, I mean, I do celebrate the entire catalog. I don't know if I could pare it down to 4. That's asking a lot.
Celebrate the entire catalog, of course. Office Space, Michael Bolton reference. Too good of a movie for Cinephobe, I would imagine.
Yeah, way too good. Yeah, not even close to qualifying.
Okay, while we're in this space, I have begged Porter, my producer, to watch Office Space for years, and he simply won't do it. Will you get my back, please? Will you get my back, please?
It's one of the funniest movies ever.
Thank you. See?
Yeah.
Told you.
I'll watch it. I'll watch it.
Yeah.
Watch it today.
Yeah, leave. Just go.
Okay.
We'll watch it right now.
See you guys.
Spence got this.
I very much don't. If he's not here, I don't know what I would do. Zach Harper, Tuesday afternoon, better known as NBA Cup Championship Day. What's the level of buzz for you for Bucks Thunder tonight?
Oh, it's an 11 out of 10.
All right.
Easily 11 out of 10. How could you not be excited for this? You know what I love about this final, now that we have our second one, is that it counts, but it doesn't count. Right? Like it counts for these guys will win money if they win, they get the cup, they have to raise a banner, it sounds like, no matter where you are. We saw that with the Lakers last year. But this is something where like Giannis could score 100 points tonight and it doesn't count in the record books. And I love that. I love that it's in this weird state of like limbo.
Yeah, it's something that I'm sure will continue to evolve. I wonder do you ever believe, like 20 years from now, dudes will look at this as not close to the Larry O'Brien, but something that really has value? Because the parallel that's always drawn is like the FA Cup in the Premiership, or it's the U.S. Open Cup here with MLS. I know you're a big soccer guy, so you're following me.
Right.
And those trophies do have appeal, but they don't have the same appeal as like winning the league. What's the best case scenario for NBA basketball years from now with this project they've started?
Yeah, I mean, I think it will take time. I think it will take a generation of fans coming through and having this be a regular thing. Like, you know, people like us, we can like it. We can be excited about it. We can buy into it, but it's never going to hold the feeling of a true like championship for a tournament, the way it does in other leagues around the world. But it doesn't mean it won't hold value for the people who win it. I do think there will be a point where you're right. It's never going to be the Larry O'Brien trophy, but there will be times, you know, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 years from now where, yeah, it absolutely has meaning and the teams won it.
All right. Well, we do have a good matchup. I suppose it could be worse. But before we get to the game, I did watch some of the semifinal, and it felt like a corporate all-star crowd.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that's a problem, Zach. I don't know what the answer would be, but since we're both smart basketball guys and we're still waiting for people to take us up on our offer to come in and clean up the franchise with our side hustle, could you do something like you reward the fan bases for teams that have advanced and send, I don't know, a couple thousand Hawks fans or whatever,
right,
to make it feel like it's not just a bunch of corporate suits sitting on their hands or their phone? I mean, the atmosphere was underwhelming for the semis. For
sure. It was super underwhelming. I think the games were great, but the atmosphere, it didn't feel like anything, right? And I think, you know, I actually have this here's a little preview of The Bounce, our free newsletter at The Athletic, for tomorrow. I actually asked Jason Concepcion, he's at Network on Twitter and all these social media spots, does a great podcast called Six Trophies with Shea Serrano. Like, Jason is really smart with this stuff. He follows soccer even more than you and I do. And he had this great suggestion of in you know, the Euro leagues and soccer and everything, they have these official and unofficial kind of fan clubs, right, for each team. And when you get to these tournaments, they find ways to get those people, kind of what you're talking about, to get those people into those matches in order to have a real environment. The NBA absolutely has to do that. Like, this can't just feel like another all-star crowd or anything like that. Like, it has to feel like something that's special for the fans in order for people to buy in. And I think that's a great way of doing it. And didn't they just sign a $76 billion deal? I think they could afford to get the teams to, like, get a couple thousand fans of theirs to Vegas to at least have that moment and that support within the arena.
Speaking of the NBA's profit and loss statements, the hot button topic in media over the past week or so has been the ever declining ratings of NBA regular season.
Yeah.
And of course they are trying things. It's not like they're not doing anything, but
right.
I'm of the opinion, Zach, the revenue streams created with the international interest in basketball kind of allows the NBA to look at the domestic ratings with a bit of like not necessarily we don't care, but we're going to be fine no matter what. It is the second biggest sport globally. The Sports Business Journal had a good piece over the weekend. Soccer is still the world game, as you know, and basketball is too. So really, people can bellyache about the ratings all they want, but it just feels like the money that comes in from overseas that expedites potentially something compromising domestically just allows the NBA to kind of laugh at conversations like this. Is that fair to say, and is that good business?
I mean, yeah, I think that's fair to say. They just signed a $76 billion deal with low ratings.
Right.
Like, I got to be honest. Like, I want people to watch basketball. I want people to celebrate basketball. I want people to be into it like I am and like you are. Like, it matters to me. I just can't care about ratings anymore. Like, the league is doing really well. They just signed a historic deal. And yes, they get their butts kicked by the NFL every damn time there's any kind of conflict. And even when there isn't, like, you just compare the numbers, it's not close, fine. But yes, you're right. Like, internationally seems to make up for it and then some. And then on top of that, aren't they kind of like getting back in with China now? Like, that's more money that's going to come in, right? That's more interest. Like, I think from a global standpoint, it's fine. I think from a U.S. standpoint, yeah, it's disappointing, but they're doing fine. Like, the salaries are going up. The salary cap's going up. The league is getting all this money. I don't think it's an actual issue until they have to start peeling back some of this financial progress.
Well, and it also comes down to, where your yard is at, where your feet are at.
Yeah.
We had Tom Haberstroh on, your buddy Tom on yesterday, and we were kind of reflecting back because if you really pay attention to how profitable the business is based off of what you just said with the TV deal, and then you listen carefully, sometimes people on the inside of the league, players and coaches and execs, will say, as the kids say, the quiet part out loud. And when a couple of years ago, after the Mavs were eliminated from the postseason and Jason Kidd took the dais and said, what you guys don't get is we're millionaires cheering for each other, I just went, oh. Yep. Like, we know, Jason, but, there is this feel from people that are in the league that kind of laugh at everybody else that believe that because you're not the NFL, you're in trouble when these guys are essentially living the life they always want to live.
Yeah, I mean, I think Andrew Schlecht, who's a great, Thunder person for The Athletic, does a great job with our audio and stuff. I saw him on a clip of something saying that the next contract that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander signs, he's going to be the first $80 million a year player. Do you think Shai Gilgeous-Alexander thinks like, oh no, these ratings are low? Of course not. Like, Jason Kidd was right about that. Like, what you're saying is correct. Like, yes, there could be a bubble that bursts at some point. I do think the league does a poor job of marketing itself. They don't know what to do when it's not LeBron and Steph and KD. These are all issues. This Thunder team should be super popular around the entire league, the entire world, everything. That, like, they have a bunch of issues, but the money keeps rolling in. It's like, I've talked about this with Trae Young and Karl Anthony Towns and everything, where people are like, hey, they should be better at this and they should be doing this to, affect winning and change these habits. And I'm like, yeah, I'm with you. But when you're signing $200, $300 million deals, how can I tell you you're wrong in the way that you do this, right? Like, until the money stops coming in the way it is, I don't see the actual fear of these low ratings or any of that stuff.
Well, and this is always, Zach, what I come back to whenever anybody does the whole, like, well, the game was different in the 90s and people played more games in the 90s. You want to know why? Players had to play for paychecks in a way they don't have to play for paychecks back. Now, back then, were there exceptions? Were there you had the Jordans, you had the Ewings, you had the guys that made big money, but you had, I can remember this vividly, you had a lot of players in real financial issues that had to get paid twice a month. So therefore, yes, they were going to show up and play. The reason it feels different is because the money is different. You always follow the money if you want the answer.
Yes, absolutely. Like a perfect example, like, from what, 96 to 98 or whatever, Jordan made 30 a year, right? 30 million a year. And yes, inflation, all this, I get all that. I don't need that explained, but to put that in perspective, Ben Simmons makes $40 million this year, and I was shocked he played as many as 31 minutes last night. That's where we are. That's where inflation is, right? Like that's just the case. Like you're right. They had to play for their careers now, back then. Now it's, and I don't think it's like, look, there are parts of the 90s game and all the nostalgia stuff I love. There are also parts where I look at them like that's a bad product. Like we romanticize it, right? And there are times with the current NBA, I think this is great. And there are times I'm like, yeah, it's a bad product at times, right? Like you're always going to have those ebbs and flows. But you can't tell me these players are in trouble or the league's in trouble when all this money keeps coming in.
Well, and also to add to that, it's very easy for anybody on the outside, whether it's fans or media, to criticize, players that don't appear to be motivated to play or players that appear they're just kind of going through the motions. Any one of us with that type of money in the bank, like if I knew I had a $70 million guaranteed deal twice a week, I'd show up and make fart noises for 4 hours in the microphone. Like I'm not,
I'd look like Orlando Sean Kemp out there constantly.
Like it's hard to blame them when the money's there. So I'm not judging. I guess what it is from a basketball fan standpoint, there's really nothing better than basketball when it's played by the best players in the world who care. And I would like some more of that is all.
Absolutely. I would too. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not absolving these players. I just understand it, right? That's human nature. Like we've seen that, for decades and decades and decades. And there's, yes, there was a game last night, Denver, Sacramento. That was one of the best games I've seen in a year.
Yep.
Right. It was incredible. Denver up big in the first quarter. Kings come back. The last 7 possessions of the game until DeMar DeRozan missed on the final play, 7 lead changes on 7 straight possessions. Like it was incredible. And if we had more games like that, like, yes, you could justify all this stuff. We don't. Those are highs and lows. Like I said, the ebbs and flows of it all. People's watching habits are different, and we've just got to accept that. And I think the way to change that is for people to make the games actually matter. That means the media, that means the fans, that means the players, that means the coaches, that means the teams, that means the league. And the league, again, just does a bad job of promoting itself. But at the same time, all this money just came in. How can you tell them they're doing a bad job?
And that's always going to be the bottom line. I can bark about their issues. They send me their P&L statement, and then they just drop the mic. And I get it.
Right.
Tom's point yesterday was, basketball in the NBA is at its best when there are compelling stories to be told. And you referenced Oklahoma City, and I don't think their story is being told enough because every time I dial in, I just think this team, what Sam Presti has done, and you guys released the front office rankings, and OKC was at the top, deservedly so. What Sam has done to build this thing to be awesome now and potentially awesome forever with everything they have in their back pocket is pretty stunning. And every time I hone in on them, I do feel like we might be high speed ahead, even though we talk about the era of parity to OKC and Boston. I'm not sure anybody can do anything about it. Tim McMahon hopped on the show earlier. He dropped the stat. OKC is 17-2 when they have a 7-footer available, either Chet or Hartenstein. Like they're insanely good. Yeah. What stands out most about not just in a vacuum, but 30,000 feet about what Sam has built?
I think it's the dominance, right? Like the versatility and the dominance is just so apparent. They have 20 wins right now. 17 of them are by double digits, right? They have a net rating. Like think about the Warriors with Kevin Durant. Think about the Boston Celtics last year. Think about the Miami Heat with the Big Three. Think about all these dominant teams we've seen over the last 20 years. There are 3 teams in NBA history that have a higher margin of victory than this Thunder team. It's like the 71 Bucks, the 72 Lakers, and the 96 Bulls. That's it. Like they are dominant no matter what. Chet's out, no big deal. Isaiah Hartenstein's out, no big deal. Shea's having an off night, no big deal. Like it just doesn't matter. This team is so well coached, so well run. Like I mean, I'll just throw this name out there now. because I didn't know who he was before the season. He's some rookie for them and not even like a high draft pick or anything. This dude, A.J. Mitchell, I watch their games, and A.J. Mitchell comes in for like 8 minutes and plays great basketball. I'm like, who is this guy? How did they find him? Like, it doesn't matter who they play. There's few teams around the league. You know, Boston's this way. Orlando has become this way despite the injuries. OKC is this way. It is truly like that cliche of next man up when someone's out. They embody it. They embrace it. They thrive with it. And I think OKC is the best example of that right now. I think the best thing that, like, I get it, markets and all this crap. If you want the best basketball, the best thing that could happen for the NBA right now as things stand is Celtics Thunder in the finals. That would be some of the best basketball we'll ever get.
On board with that, man. Give me 7 games, if not more, if that's possible, but it's not. But for sure, I'd love to see those two teams play. And, you know, in the name of trying to tell a compelling story, this is essentially my 18th year doing live radio full-time, my 22nd year doing any sort of radio, part-time for 4 years. You know the deal. You got to do part-time for a while. And I don't think I've ever been more challenged to tell a compelling story about our pro basketball team here in Salt Lake. Look, man, I'm watching the game last night, and I never tap out. Harden was shooting practice three-point shots. They were down like 40. I'm like, dude, I'm not watching this.
Yeah.
Is there a compelling story? If in 3 years their starting front court is Lowry Markkanen, Cooper Flagg, and A.J. Debanza, maybe that's compelling. I don't know what's compelling about the Jazz this year, Zach. I don't.
There was a point I'm locked into Nuggets Kings last night, and it's just this incredible finish. I couldn't believe DeRozan missed that shot. You know, kind of a bunny, a tough shot, but still kind of a bunny at the same time. He should make that. And I'm just like, man, I was like, I need a cigarette after this, right? Like that was basketball euphoria. It was great. And then the only game that's left is Clippers Jazz. And I'll admit, I hadn't watched the first 40 minutes of it. I turn it on. The Clippers are up 38 at that point. With about 8 or 10 minutes to go, I can't remember exactly what it was, but they're up 38. And I actually wondered, I thought, if they pulled 3 athletic fans from the wall in that arena and had them with 2 other Clippers players, anyone's choice, could they keep this thing above 20 for 3 minutes? Like that, and part of that is the Clippers are playing really well, and part of that is the Jazz just, I don't know. I don't know, man. Like I've covered some bad teams before. Like I covered the Kings during the early Tyreek Evans years, which at least he was compelling. So there was that. I covered the Minnesota Timberwolves to the point where I wrote about so many 25-point losses during a season that one night, I think against the Grizzlies, I just said, I'm going to write about hand dryers in public restrooms instead. And eventually found a tie-in to the Timberwolves. But I was just ranking this is what I think is a good one. I hate that that one continuous cloth that just keeps going through this alleged sanitizer. That's like a typhoid rag to me. I hate that. There were all these things I wondered about. But yeah, when you're covering a bad team, there's just not a way to make them interesting unless there's a player that supersedes all that. And they just don't have that right now.
No, they don't. And we'll end on this because I read your piece today at the gym, rear delt fly day. It's not a big deal. If you want my workout, I'll send it to you. It's pretty impressive.
Those legs, man.
I told you Saturday. I told you over the weekend. If you want before and after photos, just hit me up off air. But I did read today that you wrote.
Send me those photos.
Just keep your phone on later on. You wrote potential trades, and you named 3 Jazz players: John Collins, Colin Sexton, Jordan Clarkson. What sort of interest do you think there really legitimately is on the market for those 3 Jazz players? And do you think that it's a good shot one or all 3 get moved?
I don't know. It's tough to read this market right now because it is so new. I think they're trying to figure out, is Butler really available? Is Brandon Ingram really someone you want to go get? There's just all this. Shoot, sorry, these dogs I'm with are about to go nuts. There's just all these issues with it. But I think for the Jazz, they're kind of towards the end of those dominoes falling. I think Collins maybe, Sexton maybe. I don't think Jordan Clarkson has much value at this point, but we do have potential for a lot of moves, or the CBA to just not allow it at all.
All right, buddy, go tend to those dogs. We'll set you loose. Appreciate the time, man. We'll chat soon.
Man.
All right, Zach Harper from The Athletic writes a daily piece and a daily newsletter. And today was all about the trade market. You can find it up on his Twitter page, which is @TalkHoops. NBA Cup final tonight. Did you guys even know? Bucks, Thunder, Dame. We can watch for Dame, right? We love Dame around here. Milwaukee's kind of turned some things around. Although Chris Middleton appears to be out tonight, him coming back into the lineup has really helped them. OKC is worth your price of admission. If you're one of those basketball fans, and I've heard from a lot of you that's a little bit ambiguous with pro basketball right now, Oklahoma City is worth your time. That's a well-coached team. They play the right way. And as we try to draw parallels about what the Jazz could look like in a couple of years as opposed to where we find ourselves now with a team that just is unserious about competition, if in 3 years your starting front court is Lauri Markkanen, Cooper Flagg, and A.J. Demancia, maybe all this was worth it. All right, more local football coming up next. Dave Fox stops by. We'll launch into the 5 o'clock hour of the drive. But welcome back to the show, Ryan from the Dish Bros. Very affordable options for cable television, for your internet situation, and also your wireless networks. All you need to do is dial 801-424-DISH. What's going on, Ryan?
You know, this is a interesting time because I've been waiting for this to happen, but it's finally come around. Streaming services are more expensive than Dish. If you didn't see that, the latest increase with YouTube TV, guys, this kind of is an eye-opening experience. Now, this is a pretty significant increase, and I would fully expect you see another one in the next 6 to 12 months. And so here's the deal. You want to stick around with your existing streaming packages as they continue to pile on the rate increases. Guys, we see it all the time, and I'll tell you, this offer, that's why it works. 2 years of credits. The price is guaranteed not to change. You get the biggest, fastest DVR on the market. This thing is lightning fast. It's got all the features you need. Like Spence and I talk about all the time, you can skip through commercials, skip between slow plays on a football game. It's got all the abilities to just truly give you that full DVR power. And guys, get access to all your content on your mobile devices, the Dish Anywhere app, including your DVR recordings. Have all the streaming apps built into the system through the Hopper, and they work on all your TVs. And speaking of streaming apps, Netflix is probably the most popular one out there, right? And so why don't we throw in Netflix also free for the next 2 years? Guys, this is a awesome promotion. Listen, when they do these offers, you just got to just take it. They're throwing a whole bunch of free stuff. The Netflix offer is worth $370. You've got all the new customer credits. We'll throw in movie channels. I'll throw in dinner at JCW's. We'll get you installed for free. And, guys, just have the best TV solution out there and get the best price guarantee when you call the Dish professionals. Call us today. Hey, listen, if you got a new TV, we can help install that also. And if you want a new TV, one of the internet providers is actually offering a free 50-inch TV when you get set up with them. And this is the service I've been using for the past 2+ years. It's $50 a month. So don't be trapped in your cable bundle. You saw your cable bill go up, saw your DirecTV bill go up. The fiber internet went up 20%. If you don't believe me, check your bill. Call us up because there's ways you can lower all those things just by calling us and letting us work our magic. Plus, we can also help with cell phone services. Use the same cell towers that you're currently using. Just pay a different provider and get a free iPhone 16 Pro or a Samsung S24 for free, no trade-in, and pay $20, $30 a line less and have the best coverage in the nation and all the roaming, the hotspots, all the stuff you're accustomed to, and pay less. Call us today, save money, get dinner at JCW's on us, and hey, if you don't like the Netflix offer, I'll throw in a $200 gift card in lieu of, if you'd like. So call now, though, before this promotion change. 801-424-DISH. That's 424-3474.
All right, there he is, Ryan from the Dish Pros. More coming up on the other side right here on ESPN 700. Did we get Mikulich? Were we able to make the shift? I'm going to be on TV tonight with the GOAT, the most talented sports broadcaster on that station by far, Adam Mikulich, 1035 KMYU. Were we able to get Adam today?
He was unfortunately too busy.
Huh. All right, 1035. If you want to see what television magic looks like between two professionals, tune in to KMYU at 1035 tonight. So who did we get to fill this segment? My rundown's it's blank.
There's a lesser known, but still, I think, somewhat professional.
A rising star?
You could say he's a rising star.
Oh, okay.
Young guy.
Nice.
Really young guy.
Nice.
Up and comer in the market for sure.
All right.
David.
Oh.
David something?
David Fox from the TV series Yellowstone?
There you go.
Oh, wow. On a Tuesday. Hi, Dave. How are you?
Good. How are you doing? How's it going?
I'm good. Where are you driving?
I am on my way to Logan. We have a Utah State basketball game tonight on KMYU that I'm broadcasting. That's why you've got your boy Adam talking jazz with you.
Okay. Well, since you're going to call the Utah State game, I'll ask you why the basketball culture in Logan seems to bring us awesome teams regardless of who the head coach is.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? So think about this, Spence. You had Craig Smith, 3 years, gone. Ryan Odom, 2 years, gone. Danny Sprinkle, 1 year, gone. And now Jared Calhoun comes in, and they're 10-0. It just keeps going. You know, I guess you build a culture, and it begins with some sort of success that allows you to bring in more players. And also, you got to remember, Spence, there's generally two reasons coaches leave. And usually because the team's either really good or it's really bad. And in the case of the last three coaches, the team's been really, really good. And so the incoming coaches inherited a good group. But, again, in today's climate, you still have to fill out the roster with a lot of new players. You remember last year the big story was how they didn't return a single player for Danny Sprinkle, yet he had a great season. And they've got a little bit of a core back this year, but some newcomers that have fit in well. And Coach Calhoun's just done a great job with these guys. They're really a lot of fun. And the atmosphere up here is so much fun to broadcast games in. It's just we're really getting a kick out of it.
Yeah, it's an incredible atmosphere to watch college basketball. There's no doubt about that. All right, from a local college football standpoint, several pieces of news have broke since you and I last were able to visit, namely Isaac Wilson, after wishing Utah fans Godspeed and entering the transfer portal, either did not find what he was looking for out there or very much liked the way Utah tried to grab him back to be back in the fold, and he is. He is going to compete. And we were talking about this earlier. I don't know where we're at with Isaac's injury. I mean, we forget that he got hurt. I mean, he's got a rehab before he's ready to go, but good news to add another talented young player in that quarterback room. Isaac Wilson is once again a Ute. Dave, what do you think?
Well, you know what? I was on your show a couple of weeks ago, and don't sell yourself short, because we actually brought up, we didn't dwell on it, but we just had mentioned the idea that these portal guys can change their mind. And we didn't specifically say Isaac was going to do that, but that was a possibility that was always out there. And then when he started throwing out tweets complimenting some of the hires and things like that, you begin to think, well, maybe he's, that not that antagonistic against the Utes or whatever. I'm sure he shopped around a little bit, but honestly, it doesn't completely shock me, other than you got a guy coming in that's got 2 years of eligibility and Dampierre, and Wilson obviously is, short of injury, most likely anyway, going to be behind him at least for 1 year. But you hit on something. You talked about the injury. Maybe he feels like he needs a year to get completely right, like Cam did. And why not just stay with, where you're comfortable and redshirt a year and then go from there?
Yeah, and I kind of like the fact that he wants to compete for that starting job if he's ready to go, if he is ready to roll, when spring rolls around, because it's obvious, Dave, to draw the parallel between Devin Dampier and Jason Beck and the relationship they have and how good Devin was in that system. And he is going to have the inside track because of the season he just had at New Mexico with Utah's new offensive coordinator, who was his coach down there. But I think, I'll just say where I'm at after watching a bunch of stuff on Devin is I think Isaac has a livelier arm. I really do. I mean, if this thing is truly open to a competition, because we're hearing that he did meet with Jason and the two of them had a conversation. Who knows what that sounded like? But if this truly is an open conversation and Jason isn't just giving Devin the starting job, and part of me believes that that's the deal, maybe Isaac will have something to say about the starting job maybe as soon as this fall. Who knows?
Well, and Isaac went into spring ball last year, and we were talking back then, all the reports that we had is he was a runaway favorite to be the backup to Cam, because like it wasn't even close at times. So the kid's not lacking in confidence, and maybe he feels like a new voice in the in terms of an offensive coordinator. I don't know how much he bonded with Bajakian. I couldn't tell you that. Obviously, we weren't in those rooms, but I do admire his desire to come back, and you're right, at least compete for that. And it's, I'll tell you what I think is going to be most interesting in all of this, though, Spence, is how Beck is allowed to run that room. And it's never been, I think we've all been under the assumption that Coach Whittingham has always had his thumb a little bit on not even a little bit, a lot on whoever the offensive coordinator is. And I wonder if there's a page that has been turned in this particular hire, maybe even with the help of input from, some of his other coaches and players, by the way, to the point to where, maybe Scally said, let's just let this guy do his thing. Don't, and go from there. That's the part I'm going to be really curious to see, because you'd never feel like, or at least I haven't felt like, and I think you probably agree over years, that the offensive coordinator has had complete autonomy underneath Coach Whittingham. We'll see if that changes.
And I just have to wonder how much of Jason's hire was influenced by what Morgan had to say. And I will be very clear, I honestly do not know. You just kind of go off of what Kyle had to say about how Morgan's going to be a part of this. And, I've talked to you about this prior to the season. Part of me did feel like this was going to be it for Coach Witt, depending on how the season went. But we know what happened this year, and my guess is Kyle didn't want to go out like that. But this is not a scenario where Kyle's around for another 3 or 4 years, I don't think. So I just have to wonder how much of the Jason Beck hire was Morgan Scally influence. And a lot of people believe Morgan to be a little bit more open-minded to allow the offensive coordinator to do his thing than, quite frankly, Coach Witt has been. That's not a knock. That's just a reality, because we know the way Kyle believes football should be played. And look, he's earned the right to tell us that, because Kyle's belief in the way football should be played has brought championships to Salt Lake City. But if Morgan really has a heavy hand in this, maybe we will see Jason kind of being able to have carte blanche and call plays the way he believes offensive football should look like.
Well, just to echo what you said, we can only go by what Coach Whittingham told us. And he made it very clear. Nobody asked him. He went out of his way, you heard it in his press conference, to say, and he said it repeatedly, that Morgan will be heavily involved in this. Now, I don't know if you're going to have a situation where Kyle's, saying something during the course of a game and Morgan runs down and says, Coach, just let him do his thing. But, that would be the extreme. But to echo what you said, I do believe, and I have nothing to base this on, neither one of us do. We don't sit in those meetings. But I do believe that they probably sat down and Morgan said, let's bring in a guy, and I like this guy, that we can just turn this over to. And think about the other coaches he's hired on the offensive side of the ball as well. So they've already allowed him to do that, which that doesn't happen all that often when you bring in offensive coordinators. I mean, it does, but not at Utah. So they're already giving him the latitude of, the freedom to run the program and the offense the way he wants to. Now, once they start, once the games start, we'll see if that continues. But it certainly feels like it's headed that direction.
Hey, before we move off of Utah, I'm seeing on your Twitter page, and I didn't know Cletus Woodbury, who passed. I knew his brother because we had him at RSL. I saw Cletus quite a bit at Rice Eccles. I met him once or twice, but I have not talked about this on the show, and I've seen a tremendous outpouring from the community to support this family who, like I said, I don't know like a lot of people do, but tell us about Cletus, who passed away, and maybe some information on where people can go to support his family.
Well, just an absolute gem of a man. I knew his father really well, Bruce Woodbury, who passed away a few years back. He was the sports information director at Utah for years. And Cletus, or Woody as we call him, he hung around even as a kid at football games and whatnot. Even now, just such a great guy. When we broadcast the high school football championship games up at Rice Eccles, we actually are in his office, and he is so nice. Because he has an office. He had an office there in Rice Eccles Stadium, and he would come in and say hello, and it was always very cordial to us. And that's just a minor thing, but over the years, he's just an absolutely great guy. We probably talk maybe about once a month just on the phone of just general stuff, what's going on with the youths, what's going on with your kids. And he always just takes the time he just cares about a lot of things and a lot of people. He will be missed. We lost him way, way too young. There is I'm driving now, so I don't have the exact
I got it.
website
I got it to
for
GoFundMe. We'll get it out. Yeah, we'll get it out.
Yeah, GoFundMe. Yeah, get that out, because it's daunting what that family's had to go to. Oh, it's just heartbreaking. He's just such a great guy. The whole family's just great people, and I was just stunned when I first heard about it. And my thoughts and prayers are with his family, his wife and kids, and his siblings, and that as well. But just a great guy, and I'll tell you what, youth through and through from the day he was born.
Yeah, tough stuff. Too young, 46 years old, it looks like. So tough stuff there. No easy way to move on from it, so we'll just simply do that and move on from it. I want to ask you a question that I've asked a lot of guests about the Utes this last season and that losing streak that was unprecedented, and just 2-7 in conference, 5-7 overall, no bowl game. You're a guy that's covered this program for a long time, been around this program for a long time. What gives you the most confidence that this year was a moment in time and an exception as opposed to the rule? What gives you the confidence it'll be better next year?
Well, two things. One, that there was an awful lot placed on the ability of Cam Rising to get out and deliver. And when he wasn't able to, there wasn't a backup plan. And I feel like there hasn't been for the last couple of years. Now I feel like there is. And it's taken a new offensive coordinator, some new offensive coaches, already some transfers, some quality portal guys that have come in. Others were waiting on you. You talked in your last segment about the Washington State running back. I narrowed it down to Utah and Arizona. A guy like that coming in. That's one thing that really makes me feel like better days are ahead. I just feel like, and a lot of fans probably feel this way, they spent too much time just waiting on Cam Rising, and they were riding that season from a couple years ago when he once again, and he was great. He took them to the Pac-12 championship game and back to the Rose Bowl again. And now, for the first time since then, Spence, they're not living in the past. They're not just sitting around waiting and hoping it works. So that gives me a lot of confidence. And honestly, a couple of other things. Some of the players that went to the portal and then decided they're coming back. And the fact that, circling back to Coach Whittingham, bringing in, or at least saying that Morgan Scally is more involved in all this, I feel like that's going to help as well. I feel like maybe as he's getting prepared to move on to the next phase of his life, he's allowing the opportunity to get more help. And I think there's three things that really give me confidence that this is going to be a much better team next year. And we'll see. But everybody's still got to stay healthy, right? Isn't that at the end of the day the bottom line with football?
Well, it has been the bottom line for Utah football for 2 years. And I'll tell you one thing that I feel like has been lost in what happened this year is what Kyle did last season. Like getting that team to 8 wins, a lot of people were down on the program. A lot of people wondering whether or not it's time for the succession plan to take place. Don't forget, 2 years ago, with a skeleton crew, they won 8 games. And the year before that, they were in the Rose Bowl. So let's just pump the brakes a little.
Yeah, and by the way, they had a transfer last year in the middle of the season. Remember when Nate Johnson left? And now he's back in town. I mean, he hasn't committed or anything, but at least he's circling back. So you're right. It's amazing. That year was phenomenal. This year, they ran out of that good fortune. And there were a lot of really close games that they probably certainly had an opportunity to win that they didn't. I mean, you can count them up going the other direction. Iowa State, BYU, Houston. I mean, on and on we go. So this could have been another one of those 8-4 type of years. Had a couple of balls bounced the right way in just 2 or 3 games.
Also, since we last spoke, I'm not sure that I've been able to get your take on Bronco Mendenhall. You're driving up to Logan, which is his new home. Now, Bronco on two separate stops, Brigham Young and Virginia. He only had a year at New Mexico, but did a good job there in a truncated space. He really has been asked to turn programs around multiple times. And say what you want about the approach, and I don't think we're going to get the same religiosity undertones in Logan that we did in Provo. Say what you want about some of the ways he decides to express himself. He has proven that he can do what Utah State is asking him to do. What do you make of that hire?
Is religiosity a word? I haven't heard that one. Your thesaurus skills are phenomenal.
Thank you, sir.
But you're right. We don't hear that up here. I love the hire. I think it's great. What an interesting path, though, he's been on. Is he mysteriously just leaves Virginia, and no one had any clue that was coming, heads to Montana, spends a year building a ranch, and then resurfaces at New Mexico. I think we were all scratching our heads at that one, even though he had been at New Mexico before he came to BYU as the defensive coordinator. But I still found that one a little odd. And then at the end of the day, here he is. He mentioned in his press conference how it's almost just an uncanny fit because he's got family here. He's an agricultural guy, i.e. rancher, and this is, the Aggies, an agricultural school. He just went on and on about, how it was just a no-brainer. And you're right. He needed to fix BYU, and he did. Stayed for quite a while. Virginia was a mess, and he went in there. They worshiped that guy. He had him in the bowl game overnight. And then New Mexico, he wasn't really there long enough, but he improved him in just the one season he was there. So he is very good at doing this sort of thing, and I think he's going to fit in absolutely great up here in Logan. I think it's a good job for him, and I think it's a great hire for the Aggies. I'm really looking forward to seeing what he does and how he gets this program going because, man, what a rough year for them, and off the field.
Sure. So over the past week, there's been a local story and a national story that I think are intertwined. So Bill Belichick has taken the head coaching job at North Carolina, and his father was there a number of years ago. It's kind of a unique fit. Michael Lombardi, who was a high-level executive in pro football, has been hired to be their GM. And so ultimately we're seeing college football programs starting to build out like the pros do because it's moving into a pro model. And Kevin Young and his staff at Brigham Young have a staff that is unique to all of college basketball. You can look it up. I did. Go look at every college basketball program. Kevin, 10 years in the league. They've got 2 assistant coaches that were G League head coaches. Their nutritionist was with the Suns. Their strength and conditioning coach comes from the NBA. And they just signed the number 1 player in the country in A.J. Debanza. Is this the start of a movement towards essentially the pro model? Because that's what this thing is. You can call it the transfer portal. I'll call it free agency. We have one example in college football and then a local example here in college basketball about the way programs being built in order to find success. Is this the start of something we'll see pretty much everywhere?
Oh, absolutely. And your first thought is you talk about the NHL, the NIL, and the player movement. That's your first thought that, oh, man, this is becoming like pro ball. But the next thing that started happening this year and a little bit last year is when these teams started hiring essentially general managers that are different from the coaching staff. You know what I mean? Every team's hiring these guys now. And it is exactly a pro model. And, you feel like there's going to be times when, corporate America is going to be able to purchase these teams at the rate they're going. We wouldn't be shocked if we get to that point. But that's exactly what it feels like. And when the Belichick thing first came up, it just seemed like really that's all he could come up with. And maybe he didn't get a sniff in the NFL, so he figured he'd do something. He does have family history there, as you pointed out. But man, we are headed more and more to that direction. And just the way these college teams make up not only their coaching staff but their front office staff. They have directors. They've always had directors of player personnel, but now to have these general managers and guys that oversee, the NIL spending and that kind of thing. It's wild. It's really wild.
All right, Dave, have a great call tonight. Tell our listeners the programming information where they can find the TV Gold.
Okay, so 7 o'clock, got the Aggies against UC San Diego. Aggies going for 11-0. By the way, UC San Diego, they're 9-2. They've won 7 in a row. They're not terrible. That's at 7 o'clock KMYU. At 10:30 on KMYU, since I'm up doing this, Spence Checketts with who he likes to refer to as the GOAT, Adam Mikulich, doing Talking Jazz, which is becoming more and more challenging to do with every show. But they will deliver the Jazz Gold tonight on KMYU.
There is no Jazz Gold to be delivered. We will just do our best, David. Have a great call, buddy, and we'll chat soon, okay?
All right, thanks, buddy. Talk to you later.
All right, Dave Fox, I'll be on TV tonight. Breaking news, Michael Vick finalizing a deal to become Norfolk State's next head football coach. Look at that. For you youngsters, tonight when you're home, Google Michael Vick, go on YouTube, and then just enjoy. Dude was the baddest dude on the planet for like 5 years. All right, we'll get into the 5 o'clock hour of the program, but first, we'll welcome in Ryan from the Dish Pros, who has affordable options for wireless internet, for cable television, as well as your cell phone bill, too. He can save you a grip of money, and this time of year, we can all use it. All you have to do is dial 801-424-DISH. What's going on, Ryan?
Hey, Spence, thanks so much, as always. You know, it's an interesting time. If you haven't noticed, your bill went up. Not necessarily with Dish. I'm talking about YouTube. I'm talking about DirecTV. I'm talking about cable. I'm talking about your internet provider, especially your fiber account. Guys, these increases are pretty significant, in 20% range in some cases. Very large amount of increase. And all I can tell you is be prepared. You'll see this happen again and again. Maybe a couple times. I'd probably anticipate 3 times in the next 2 years. So listen, if you want to pay less, call us, because this offer right now with Dish is cheaper than what you're currently paying, and it's going to be even much more cheaper next year and the following year, and your price will stay the same with Dish. Plus, we've got this great offer where you get the Netflix ad-free version free for the next 2 years. Guys, it's the biggest DVR out there, 2 terabytes, 16 tuners, auto hops commercials. Nobody else does this. It'll auto-record your favorite games. It'll auto-record the locals for you, which surprisingly is a very nice feature, especially if you're a sports fan. Call us up and get upgraded. Get the best system out there for the best price. And when you call us, we're the only premier elite retailer in Northern Utah and Retailer of the Year. We'll get you the best deal, have you installed as early as next day for free. If you got a TV you want to mount, we can help you with that. You need help with your system at all, your TV setup, we can do all of that. And guys, here's the thing. I haven't got an internet provider that will offer a free TV when you switch to them. All this free stuff out there is yours for the taking. And the hardest part about the whole thing is picking up the phone and calling us and letting us do all the work. We'll come out, set everything up for you, have one remote to run your entire system, and we'll have you installed as early as tomorrow. Call us today. Take advantage of this. If you don't want the Netflix offer, ask about the $200 gift card. I'll get you set up with that. Plus, I'll throw in dinner at JCW's if you call now. Remember, if you hear me on the radio, we cover you, so we can service you. So call us now, 424-DISH, 801-424-3474.
All right, there he is, Ryan from the Dish Pros. Coming up next, it's the 5 o'clock hour of the drive. Some surprising news out of college football. A coach is back in the game. We'll tell you that, do some Utes, do some BYU, move over to a little NBA before we say goodnight at 6 on a Tuesday afternoon right here on ESPN 700. All right, what is going on? Drive at 5 time on this Tuesday afternoon, about 7 minutes past the hour of 5 o'clock. It's been a warm, mild, temperate day, about 50 degrees and sunny earlier today. Here in Salt Lake, as the sun is starting to set in the 5 o'clock hour of this Tuesday afternoon, and as it is every day, it's good to have you with us. A lot to do on the show today. We've had a busy show so far. We've got a little under an hour before we launch into today's best, just for a little bit. Then it's Utah men's basketball versus FAU. Starting about 6:30, so stay tuned for that on the station tonight. It is the NBA Cup Final, the Emirates NBA Cup Final. Take care of the sponsor, as always. You got the Thunder taking on the Bucks in Vegas for all the marbles. I don't know. It doesn't feel like anybody gives a rip about this, not going to lie. But the Thunder are good. They're worth your time. Dame Lillard plays for Milwaukee. Obviously, Giannis. That will tip off at 6:30 at T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada on ABC. 5 o'clock hour of the drive tonight is brought to you by Orem Toyota. Brent Brown Toyota is now Orem Toyota for over 2 decades. Brent Brown has been a trusted name in Utah. As Orem Toyota, this legacy continues, and everyone is invited to experience the same dependable service now with a fresh approach that ensures that you, their valued customer, leads the way. Right now, it's their Toyota-thon, which is the biggest sale of the year. Best prices on all inventory. It's the best time to buy a car, a truck, or an SUV. Largest selection of Tundras and Tacomas on the market with a 72-month financing option. Orem Toyota puts their customer at the center of every interaction. Whether it's purchasing a vehicle, servicing an existing one, or selecting parts and accessories at Orem Toyota, you lead the way. Buy or service your vehicle how you want. The all-new Orem Toyota is located at 1400 Sand Hill Road and at oremtoyota.com. We're going to catch up with Tim McMahon coming up in a bit, NBA Daily Assist style. We'll talk some Jazz. We'll talk some NBA basketball. A lot of trade rumors surrounding the Utah Jazz as of now. Obviously, the deadline came and went about a week and a half ago. We're now about 87% of NBA players are eligible to be traded. The Jazz played a game last night, ? Well, they showed up. The Clippers were there too, and it was not close because that's kind of the deal. Big news of the day today that we've been talking about on the program is that Isaac Wilson is back for the University of Utah football program after flirting with other schools in the transfer portal. A lot of rumors that Isaac was potentially heading down to BYU, where his brother Zach played at a very high level. Of course, that did not come to fruition. Don't know if BYU did not want to meet his demands. Don't know if Isaac very much just wanted to come back to play for the University of Utah. Remember, fans, before you decide to activate your online Twitter account, Facebook account, Instagram account to attack an 18-year-old player who's decided to explore his options, the transfer portal, we're going to talk about it like it's the pros because it is, and that's the way I view it. It's like restricted free agency. Go in the portal, flirt with some other schools with the option of coming back to play for your original school, which is what Isaac did, which is what several players have done before, not just locally but nationally as well. Now, one name to continue to watch out for is Cameron Calhoun, the cornerback, really good player, good young player for the Utes last year, who, according to 24/7 Sports, today is in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, meeting with the Crimson Tide. So if that's the deal, you probably say goodbye to Cam Calhoun. Of course, Alabama Crimson Tide, ultimately, as far as the money goes, that's about as high of a price as you're going to be able to receive on the open market. So nothing official has come down with Cam Calhoun, but of course, based off the theme of the show today when it comes to the Utah transfer portal, as Bill joined us yesterday, the voice of the Utes, and he dropped early in the show that he is hearing that several Utes in the portal are expected to be back to play for the team. We see one domino fall with Isaac Wilson. Will another fall with Cameron Calhoun? Well, if Alabama really wants you, and if that's kind of the direction with Kalen DeBoer and that staff, even though by Alabama standards, they may have had a bit of a down year, probably not a lot that Utah football can do for that one. So that's been kind of the bulk of the show today. Omar Ruiz started things off today with a little pro football as Week 15 wrapped up last night with a couple of Monday night games that were just so-so. Week 16 right around the corner. So, of course, fantasy football playoffs, right? I mean, you guys are concerned about that. Patrick Mahomes has a high ankle sprain. He is questionable for the weekend. Unfortunately, a lot of injury news in the NFL prior to kind of the stretch run here that saw some really, really fun, fascinating games over the weekend. So we started things off with Omar today. Brought in Zach Harper, NBA Daily Assist. Zach writes a piece for The Athletic every day. It's a newsletter you can get in your mailbox every day. Today's piece was about the NBA trade deadline. He named John Collins, Colin Sexton, in addition to Jordan Clarkson as teams that could potentially be out there I should say as players that could potentially be out there for the Jazz if teams are interested in adding some veteran pieces. The NBA Cup allows the NBA to take a bit of a break this time of year. It certainly is by design to try to understand whether or not there are players that are available that could actually make a difference. The one name that continues to pop up is Jimmy Butler from Miami. Maybe Miami is ready to move on from him. I think he's under contract for $53.5 million coming up next year. So the Phoenix Suns, according to Shams Charania, involved to potentially acquire Jimmy Butler from Miami, but only time will tell. Of course, college football this time of year, prior to the bowl games that are kind of getting going in the CFP bracket, will start to unfold coming up. Friday night will be the beginning of the CFP, but it is all about listening to coaches complain about this current state of the sport with the transfer portal open while the season is still going on, which continues to be ridiculous. Joel Klatt's take on this, and his idea, I think, is probably the best one. You try to cater the bowl season and the CFP to end in early January, and then open up the portal after that in time for the spring semester. So that way you don't have to deal with, like, it's one thing if you're Coach Witt and the University of Utah coaching staff because you're not preparing for a game. But even if you're not in the 12-team CFP, Kalani and his group, they've got a big game to prepare for. One of the best bowl games, one of the best non-CFP bowl games is the Alamo Bowl with BYU and Colorado. I think BYU's set to take home a cool $6 million from being a part of that game. I mean, it's not a CFP takeaway, but it's a good chunk of change. You're going to play the current holder of the Heisman Trophy in Travis Hunter and potentially the number 1 overall pick in Shedeur Sanders. Some BYU players have jumped in the portal. I think their number is 6 as of now. But most of these good players are going to play for both teams. If you're Kalani, that's a lot to deal with. If you're a head coach of one of these teams that are in the CFP, that's a lot to deal with. And the latest head coach to lash out on this is Rhett Lashley from SMU, who simply is speaking fact about how insane this is, that you're asking a college coaching staff and a group of young men to get ready to compete for a national championship while after practice or after meetings, their phones are blowing up from agents to let them know they can get more money from other schools, and they have to be in the portal by December the 28th. The season's not even over. It's not even close to over by December the 28th. We have plenty of games that matter on a high level following the closing of the transfer portal. This thing cannot last. It cannot continue to take place while the season is still going on. It's unfair to the coaches. It's unfair to the players. It's unfair to everybody. But back to the original point, before you decide to get brave online, and the internet is where cowards go to feel brave, and start cracking on 18-year-olds that are trying to open up their options, like a lot of you have some crow to eat when it comes to Isaac. I saw some of the stuff that was going around, okay, completely unfair. If I was Isaac, if I was his family, I'd be pretty bummed out and disgusted being treated a certain way by a certain portion of fans when he didn't even announce he was leaving. And now he's coming back. I mean, what do you have to say for yourselves now? He is coming back. He's decided he wants to compete for this starting quarterback job. We don't know what the status is of Isaac's health as of now. Obviously, he had that knee injury. Not sure where the rehab process is. When is he expected to be cleared? Hopefully by spring. And, you know, when it comes to on ESPN 700. On ESPN 700.